And welcome back to the Luke Deckard Show. I'm your host, Luke Deckard, on this very special Monday podcast. I don't do them on Mondays, but today I'm making an exception because I've got two guests and we need to talk more about Indiana Jones, and I'm going to steal Frank's joke, the Dial-Up of Destiny. I talked about it for several hours last, Friday? So a few days ago. But, I've had time to process a little bit more. I have more opinions that I want to get across, and I want to hear what Frank and Jonathan thought of the movie, and also just talk about the Indiana Jones franchise in general, see where we might rank these films from 1 to 5, and what works, what doesn't work, and if we have any controversial opinions. So get ready for some hot takes and heresy. So first, we got Frank Ireland is with us. Hello, buddy.
Hello, everybody.
Hello. And Jonathan Whitelaw. Hello.
Hello, everybody.
And in the chat, we have Shane Ford and Biffer the Hobbit.
Yes.
Welcome. Shane Ford says, prepare to meet Kali in hell. And Biffer says, watching Indy 5 is like pouring bleach in my eyes. So, wow. Biffer, I take it you love the film, Biffer, eh? You love the film. Okay, I've given a lot of opinions on this film already, so I want to start with you guys first. Coin toss, Jonathan and Frank, who wants to set off their opinions?
Frank, you go first.
Oh.
You go first.
Oh man, I was gonna let you go first.
No, you go. I got to go first.
Alrighty, so I personally loved the movie. I thought it was fun. A little slow at parts. I think I'm going to steal Luke's line where he said there's scenes that seem long, but the movie itself didn't quite seem long. But the thing that really made me go like on the edge of my seat, like, oh my God, they're doing it. They're really doing it, is time traveling Nazis. And it goes like all Die Hard with the Vengeance with his crew and the plane. And it's like Indiana Jones is shot. We got Jurassic World bike thing going on. It's great. I had a blast. But that's my basic plots, just in general. Okay. And one more thing before I forget. I forgot to mention it last night, but I did like how in a movie someone actually said, my friend just died. I was like, finally, there's a movie where someone acknowledges that they lost their friend.
You know what? I want to pick up on that because I agree. You just reminded me about that scene because it was actually a moment where I thought, you know what? I'm glad that they've done that. But B, it was also like, I don't think it was as meta as I'm going to make it sound, but it's like, you think about the Marvel and the DC stuff and their friends are dying and they're getting hurt and crippled and no one gives a shit. And it was like, and so it was kind of like, it was nice to see that because Phoebe Waller-Bridge is basically playing a Marvel character, in my opinion. She is the quippy, zany, Tony Stark wannabe insert person. And that's just who she is as an actor. I really am not a big fan. She was okay in this, but she was basically just there for quips. And I liked that old man Harrison Ford was like, my friend just died. Show some respect. And I was like, thank you, Indy. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. Because like that just made me pop in. Like that's so perfect. It's like a cartoon Marvel character going like, haha, we saved the day. And then an old movie character from the past is like, my friend just died.
It's true. God damn, it's true.
Oh man.
Jonathan, you saw the film last night?
Last night, yeah, a matter of hours ago. In fact,
what did you think?
Yeah, it's right.
I went bleach in your eyes.
Be honest.
It wasn't quite bleach. I liked it. I liked it overall. I had this conversation with my wife last night when we were driving home, and I said to her, I went, "Did you enjoy that experience? Did you enjoy going to the cinema to watch an Indiana Jones movie?" And she said yes. And she went, "What about you?" And I went, "Yeah, I did as well." Right? I did as well. I think, Luke, I think you and I have talked about it actually. I think that the characters, the storytelling, the method through which these movies are now 40 plus years old, I don't think translates to modern day audiences. Is that an Indiana Jones movie? Is Dial Destiny an Indiana Jones movie made for 2023 audiences? It absolutely is. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? That's not up for discussion, really. That's not really for us that's not our place to discuss whether that is the case. I think it ticks the boxes.
Sure it is.
For the audience. I think it ticks the boxes for the audience. absolutely.
Yeah.
It really does. Do I hold it against the other 4 movies, or indeed 3 movies in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull? Yes, because I'm a fan. But you got to remember as well that, you know, out of the original trilogy, at least 2 of those movies, you know, one of them is considered, Raiders is considered to be a total game changer when it comes to what a blockbuster is. And Last Crusade, for me, is one of the most pitch perfect movies that's ever been made. So, you know, out of 5 movies, 2 of them are above an elite level. And and we're now 15 years on from the 4th one, which was awful. Am I glad that they made this movie and this is where they end it? Yes, I am. Absolutely. I would much rather that it ended on this note than it was left with Crystal Skull. But that's what it is, right?
So I agree. I have controversial thoughts now. I have a lot of controversial thoughts.
Oh my god, I'm excited.
A lot has changed in the last few days. So with Dial of Destiny, what did I say about it? I said it was an unnecessary but fun film. I really believe that. I think it's an unnecessary sequel, but it's not necessarily offensive to the Indiana Jones franchise. There's all these people, Indy's ruined, radical feminism. It's like, come on, guys, like grow a pair and stop acting like a bunch of children. That's maybe mixing my metaphors there, but I don't care. Grow a pair and stop acting like children. Well, that kind of works. Anyway, so I felt Dial is slightly unnecessary, but it has fun moments. Now, yesterday I tweeted, should I watch Blade Runner or should I watch something else? And now bear in mind, I watched the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull about 3 or 4 weeks ago. It was the riff track version, so it's got the Mystery Science Theater guys making fun of it along the way. It's also the original version of the movie, so it's got that ugly, yellowy, greeny nastiness. It's got really dodgy CGI. And in general, I would say Indiana Jones in the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull is still a 3-star movie. It's not unwatchable. It has some fun moments. It has some really memorable scenes. It has some memorable sets. It is underserviced by a caricature villain that I think Cate Blanchett is like, she's wonderful, but she's a joke in that movie. Shia LaBeouf has grown on me over the years in that role of Mutt. I'm still not in love with it, but so what was interesting about this rewatch now is I just come off the back of seeing Dial of Destiny. My initial reaction coming out of Dial, and by coincidence, I ended up seeing it with David Fennell, the author, and we discussed it afterwards, and we were both kind of like, he really liked it, and I was like, yeah, no, it was fun, but I wasn't blown away, right? I didn't walk out feeling energized and like humming the theme tune like I do when I watch 1, 2, and 3. But I also wasn't like disparaged either. I was just like, it was a serviceable, safe sequel. It was all quite safe. So it's hard to get really upset about because it's not. But so I watched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull yesterday, and watching those two back to back was a really weird contrast because the one thing I noticed was one of the missing touches was Spielberg and Lucas from Dial of Destiny. And you could really feel it in the way the film was shot, the way the cinematography was. And I was literally shocked that I was looking at scenes in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull and was like, this is a cool shot. This is the way this lighting is, the way they're doing playing with the shadows. This is really cool. And I don't remember a single cool scene from Dial. That's a bit hyperbolic, but there's nothing that it was striking, I think. The other thing that was interesting is on the 4K release, they've cleaned up Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. They've color corrected it so it actually looks like an Indiana Jones movie. And it is surprising how much that color correction helps your frame of mind when you watch it. Yeah. Because I'm like, I'm not having to like wade through green and yellow. I can actually see Indiana Jones in Indiana Jones like environment. And yeah, like I said, it's still a 3-star movie. But what was interesting to me this time around, which I know, like, I'm gonna get shit from Frank and Captain Iron Dog, but it took risks and didn't play it safe.
Yes. It's my fault that Luke watched it, I should say.
It is. And I walked, because, look, I thought, hey, at the end of Indy 4, he's made the associate dean. Why did that not carry over into Indiana Jones 4? I actually think it's quite disrespectful to Indy 4 to just kill Mutt. He could just be off somewhere. You don't need to murder him. He doesn't need to be murdered in war. Like, that's just like, to me, I was like, that's lazy. And so it's weird. I now have this weird new appreciation for 4 because it had the touch of Spielberg and Lucas that I think was missing with Dial. While the caricature villain was over the top, I think she's a bit more memorable than Mads Mikkelsen. Mads was just playing Mads. Like, he was Mads from Hannibal. He was Mads from Casino. He was Mads from Star Wars. He was just playing Mads. He, and it was kind of like, shit. Like, at least she was like a weird psychic, and you kind of remember her like trying to read Indy's mind. I don't really remember Mads' character, Dr. Voller, like doing anything weird or creepy. Maybe I'm wrong. Tell me.
There's that moment in Dial where he when he's posing as Dr. Schmidt in '69, and he has a go at the guy delivering his room service.
Yes,
and that it really sort of stops there. What I will say about Dial actually is, I mean, like the sheer sort of force and the visuals I thought of the Nazis in Nazi Germany, obviously at the start, 44 I think it is, and then again when they get on the plane to go through the storm, I thought that was really powerful. Actually, I found that really, really intimidating. Seeing them all, Mads Mikkelsen and the rest of them all decked up as Nazi officers.
Yeah.
I thought that was. I was really quite uncomfortable looking at that.
Yeah.
Which is something that I never ever got watching the Raiders and Last Crusade, because they always just felt like they were the baddies. And I know obviously in Crusade you've got the bit where he meets Hitler and stuff like that, but it always just felt like almost generic bad guys. Whereas in this, particularly the start, the opening 20 minutes, and then again at the end, particularly the bit at the end when they're getting on the plane to fly back to 1939. I thought the visuals of it were very, very stark, and I found it very, very intimidating and quite disturbing. I agree though, because I started on your recommendation actually. Look, I started watching Crystal Skull yesterday a little bit, and I only got maybe about half an hour in before I had to do something else. And you're right, those little moments, like there's that bit right at the start after the sort of credits, and they get to outside the factory in Area 51, and they pull Ray Winston out, and then they pull Indy out, and it's the hat on the ground,
the shadow. I know, I love
the shadow, and then
I
the
do.
way that it moves round, and you're right, it lacked that deftness of touch that Steven Spielberg, the only Steven Spielberg, can lend to not just these movies, but indeed any movie.
Yes.
Now that again, it's not to say that James Mangold did a bad job. I don't think he did a bad job, but I think you're right. I think when you have 4 movies across 3.5-4 decades that are so intrinsically woven in front and behind the camera, when you take one of those big elements away, you feel it. You feel it's like losing a limb. And I did think it lacked that. I was also pretty disappointed with the score.
The score is nice to listen to at home because it's all the little motifs from Indy. Right. It's Indy's history.
Yeah, it kind of felt a little lost. I thought
in the film, yes,
lost within the overall context, and that's something that you certainly don't get with the first 3.
No,
and again, we've talked
very
about this.
Distinct.
We talked about this privately, Luke, haven't we? We said that in particular, John Williams' score throughout the first 3 is it's as much part of the movie as the visuals of the hat and the whip and the arc and the grail and the boulder and stuff like that. Whereas I didn't feel so much that in. And then 4 always feels a little bit, it's just completely borrowed from everywhere else. It didn't really feel like an original soundtrack. There's elements to it, but it obviously is an original soundtrack. But I don't know. It kind of felt there was an awful lot of hype added towards the John Williams score for this because it's
There was,
Everybody's
yes.
last and all that, but it didn't.
Everyone was like, that Helena theme is so great. And I went and listened to it on Spotify and I was like, is it? Is it great? I mean, what do you think,
Yeah.
Frank? Did you like the score?
To me, it didn't stand out. There was like no moments, but like there was, I think the part that really kind of stood out to me because I was like, oh, this is a bit early. But when like they start playing the dun 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 dun, and he's on top of the train, I'm like, oh, this is a bit early.
When PlayStation
Like, usually-
Indie was running across the train.
Yeah, the PlayStation. Yeah. But like that was like the only part that really stood out to me because there was like points of the movie where I was humming music where I wanted the music to be, where I was like dun, 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 and it wasn't there, but I was humming it to myself as the movie was playing. But yeah, I would agree because you were talking about how the villains were like stark and that I think that was one of the things I was missing from the movies because I felt like because I mentioned on Twitter a few days ago when I rewatched Last Crusade. Last Crusade sort of like softens the edges on the Germans, the Nazis. It's almost like Bedknobs and Broomsticks, the movie by Disney, where they just sort of like, oh, they fall in the water, oh, they're goofy, and like because like the first Raiders movie, the Nazis are evil because there's that scene where she's, I'll tell you anything. He's like, yeah, I know you will, but he's still going to torture her. And then with this one, I felt like that evil. Like Nazi stuff was back because they were just killing people left and right. They didn't care because they just all they cared was about their goal. They were so like narrow visioned because there were some points where they killed people and it didn't make sense, but it's like no, they just don't care. They're just like we want to get this dial. We're going to go back in time. The goal is better than just getting caught or whatnot.
There was one line actually that sticks in my head from right at the opening part, and
is the Blade Runner line.
I think it fed into this. I don't know, but it's obviously the first MacGuffin we think is the Spear of Destiny, the one that
the one that's
in the side.
And
there's a line in it when they're moving about, and they're talking about being a fake, and it's referred to as Hitler's spear.
Yeah,
and I thought that was such a tiny little reference. It already belongs to Hitler. It already belongs to them. When in actual fact, obviously, this is meant to be a relic.
Oh no!
We've lost your audio, Jonathan. We've lost your audio.
Oh no!
The hand movement, maybe. Did you click it? Did you click it off? Nope. You keep trying your audio, and we'll keep talking. I have to admit, I did, and I still stand by this. The opening 20-30 minutes, which is the bit set 1944, to me was the best Indiana Jones movie never made. And there was a part of me that thought, I'm not a massive fan of the de-aging, but it looked pretty good. Ford's voice, being the old man Ford's voice, was a bit questionable at times.
Yeah.
But there was a moment where I thought, you know what? I would almost rather watch a 2-hour de-aged Harrison Ford, than maybe watch another old man. Because, I mean, again, these indie franchises originally were set out to just be taking place whenever, not in any sequential order. And I thought, it's like the $6 Million Man. We have the technology. You have the technology now. You actually could have done an in-betweequel, some film set between 3 and 4, and just had a fun romp of an adventure that doesn't tie you down to Marion or Mutt or anything like that. Because I do feel once we get to 1969, I like bits of it, but over the last however many days it's been since I've seen it, the kind of, I feel like I was convincing myself that I loved it when actually, in all actuality, I just thought it was fine. It was it was fine. It was too safe, I think. What did you guys think? Okay, let me look through my notes to see where we're gonna go.
Can you guys hear me again, by the way?
Oh yes.
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
You're back. Sorry, do you want to finish your thought? What were you saying?
Oh, well, it was just a little line of dialogue, just going back to what we were talking about with the sort of fearsomeness and the proper kind of villainy of the Nazis. It's a little line when they're all moving around and they decide it's a fake and what have you. And the spear is referred to as Hitler's spear.
Yes.
And already it's been consumed by this awful machine that is the Nazi war machine, and it already belongs to Hitler, and Hitler's not even seen it yet. And I don't know, it's stuck with me in the subsequent 12-14 hours since I saw the movie, and I thought it was really, really well done, actually. Whether it was accidental or whether it was deliberate, it just added to that menace.
Yeah,
That's what this lot were like, and it was I liked it in an awful way, you know.
yeah. I do think one of the other problems that I had, and Frank, I know you quite like the ending. I
Yeah,
don't,
it goes into B movie.
I don't loathe the ending. It could have been better, but I don't loathe it.
Dinosaurs.
Dinosaurs. Indy riding a dinosaur with his whip. There we go.
Yeah! He already rode an elephant. Let him ride a triceratops.
Yeah. So what I did feel though that Indy was in more terminal danger in 1944. Like when he's being hung, and there's that bomb and all that stuff. I was like, and I thought contrasting that with the very end, I felt there was more risk of him dying in the opening, even though I know he's not going to die, than what was happening at the end of the movie. I really felt like they poured all of their Indiana Jones-ness the most into that 30 minutes. And then the rest was just sort of adventure by numbers.
Do you know what? Yeah. I know that James Mangold said in an interview before it was released that he wanted the opening 30 minutes, open 25, 30 minutes to feel like it was a film that had been shot 30, 35 years ago that we've just not seen yet, you know, and I think in that sense, okay, the visuals didn't quite marry up with that, but the feeling of it did, the way that it was written, the script and all the rest of it, that really worked for me. One thing that I mean, I agree actually, because once we fast forward to 1969 and then obviously years and in Sicily, it didn't feel that was the thing about the first three movies, and to a lesser degree I think the fourth one, I always feel when I sit and watch them that they are rooted where they are, or when they are, I beg your pardon, you know. Like Temple of Doom opens with the the Club Obi-Wan scene, and it feels like it's straight out of 1933, you know, or whenever 32, 33 I think it is. I can't remember when it is, but it feels like it's very much the 30s. Again, with Raiders, it feels like it's very much set in the 30s, and the visuals of it marry up with the 30s. Whereas I kind of felt once we'd left 1944 and we went to 1969, and then as soon as we leave New York, it could have been any time, really. It could have been now. It could have been the 50s again. It could have been the 40s again. It could have been the 1840s, and then of course we blast all the way back to centuries.
I was thinking about this. Because I think there was something missing about the time era. And me and my sister were watching the plane scene, and we're like, there'd be more people smoking on this plane. Like they need to have some atmosphere, something to make it like of that era. Like a simple cigarette would just show of that era, because nowadays nobody smokes. But just like to have someone smoking, that would add so much to that time era.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yep. And I wanted to bring up something before we keep moving. The thing about the opening is, I don't know what James Mangold is. I don't know if he gets humor or not, because I think I get what he was going for that bomb and like the comical stuff with the thing. I just think it fell flat. Like I feel like if it was like Steven Spielberg, I think he would have got like more like over the top reactions from the Nazis of that thing slowly going down, and then maybe have them scurry around like trying to leave the building, because they're all just standing there looking at it. I'm like, is this supposed to be funny? Is this like, it didn't quite click? And I feel like there's a lot of things like that where it didn't quite click. And I wonder if like James Mangold doesn't know like humor, like he doesn't get it. He's trying, but it's like it's falling flat. Like the Red Letter Media brought it up with the guys, the gangsters coming in, and when you call it, he's like, "Put your guns down." It was so flat.
Is that something though that what I was talking about earlier on, when you've got a movie making team in front of the camera and behind the camera who have worked together for so long, not just in these projects, obviously with other projects, is that something that inherently will that stuff just comes that will always just come naturally when you go to shoot it, whereas when you start introducing other elements into it, particularly a brand new director, it's not like it's not, obviously there's new writers and things like that as well, but it's a new director. First time this franchise has ever had a change of director in 43 plus years. Is that one of these things? Because again, I completely agree, totally agree with that Nazi thing. You're right. Spielberg would have had them all scrambling for the door in a completely sort of Three Stooges type way. And you're right, the gangsters were so flat. They were, and it was like, what was that all about? And even the sort of, when they're in the tuk-tuks, when Indy's berating Helena about, what would your father think of this? It was just like, the shots almost lingered too long on each thing. It should have been, it should have been a little bit more rat-a-tat-tat-tat-tat, the way that you would get in a Spielberg movie, right? But let's not forget this isn't a Spielberg movie. That's the thing.
I think even with the 30-minute opening, you could still cut this movie down to 2 hours.
I think so.
Oh, absolutely.
Like,
absolutely.
There are scenes that do linger, whether it's the soft beats or the action beats. Every scene basically overstays its welcome. And this is where, and it's not like they're all like not entertaining, but you just kind of feel like, okay, I've had my time with the scene. We can move on now. It's like
they lose their energy. Spielberg has an awesome energy, and I think you're right with the team work behind the camera, because it was probably George Lucas who like, hey, why don't you have them like split fall down, because George Lucas has that kind of humor. He used that in the prequels, and if you have that with Spielberg, like the creativity and the humor, and you put that together, I think that's the original series altogether. And then this one's kind of missing that.
Okay, what did you guys think? This is a minor pick. What did you guys think of no Paramount logo dissolve?
I was too distracted because my sister was coming in late.
Oh yeah,
my mom's asking who the guy's under the hood. Why is Indy dressed like that? I was completely distracted. I almost completely missed the no Paramount logo.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute. This is your 5th film, your big send off, and you remove one of the most iconic things of the opening of every Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
It just drops you in.
The other thing, okay, what did you guys? The other thing I thought was this again, kind of minor, but also like, what are you doing? But when Indy leaves the States, why is there no map journey?
Well, you get it later on, don't we?
You don't.
It took a while to get to it.
Yeah, they don't do it until he's in Europe, and I'm like, whoa, or we're not in Europe, wherever.
I'm like, there it is.
But also, why did he need to update it? It didn't need updating. I actually quite appreciate this. Is again what I appreciated about Crystal Skull. It's like, look, I know it's a stupid prairie dog hill in Crystal Skull, but like he kept the Paramount Mountain, and he kept the way that the play and the map stuff. He kept that exactly as they were in the other. Like, why change those?
Well, like you,
I don't know. You're chopping up, Jonathan.
Yep, Jonathan.
The internet isn't doing as it's.
Yeah. But
and now we can't hear you.
Oh.
Your voice is gone.
Okay. Oh wait.
Is that better?
We can hear you now.
Right.
Okay.
What I was going to say was, like, this isn't the time to start changing the formula when everybody's telling us that this is the last indie movie.
Kind of, right?
You know, it's not like it's Casino Royale with Daniel Craig. It's the first of his what would turn out to be 5 movies as James Bond. So they remove the gun barrel. We don't get the gun barrel until the end of the second one or the third one or whatever it is.
Yeah.
You know, but he's got more movies in him that can be bled into, because of course, from a narrative point of view, from Craig's Bond, it's his first mission, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
Whereas everyone's telling us this is the last Indiana Jones movie. Why are you moving this stuff around? These are the things that make this franchise what it is.
Yeah.
Certainly don't remove it. You know, but you don't need to, like, the time for changing all this was 35 years ago, or it was 15 years ago with the 4th one when we still had another one to go. We're not gonna. It's become a thing, and it didn't need to be a thing. Right.
I almost wonder if it's like a copyright thing, because with the Paramount logo being gone, I wonder if there's like a small percentage of indie references you could use. I wonder if that's it.
Possibly.
Where you just have to switch it up.
Well, I guess this is what's confusing to me is Paramount must have some involvement, or that logo wouldn't be there. The logo isn't there just for nostalgia. So I'm like, it's a bit like the old Avengers movies. Paramount used to be the distributor, even when Disney owned Marvel, and still owns Marvel. So now it's gone, obviously, but it was, the Paramount logo was for most of, I think, phase 1 and into phase 2, I think. So it was weird. It was like, why, I guess maybe like the Red Letter Media Review is saying that, maybe it's some sort of lawyer bullshit where it's Disney first, Paramount, then Lucasfilm. But it's like, I don't know. Let's talk about characters in Dial, and then we can springboard to the rest of the franchise. What were your initial thoughts on us, where we meet Indiana? Were you happy with where we met him in life, what he was doing, what was going on? Was that a bit too Old Man Logan? What I don't know. What do you think?
You go first, Frank.
Okay, I'll go first. Yeah, I thought it was acceptable, but then again, I'm not a hardcore indie fan because I'll admit, like, if I'm a hardcore fan, it might have affected me differently because
Yeah.
I remember watching Die Hard with a Vengeance and then Die Hard 4, where John McClane is like a loser without anybody. I'm like, damn, he didn't learn his lesson.
Yeah.
But with this, it's like it's sort of okay. I'm okay with it because I just rewatched all these movies in the past week, so it's all fresh in my mind. When I grew up with these movies, it's like the first time I saw them was at my aunt's house, and then I didn't watch them again in 2008. Kind of watched them in 2010, and then got back into them just now. So it's like I'm not attached to this franchise.
Yeah.
But watching it with like fresh eyes and watching this whole series, I was okay where Indy was in his life because I'm like, yeah, that makes sense because he's probably, stuck with his mindset. Like he's probably always been a loner. That's why it never really works out with Marion, even though he does love Marion, for his whole life and whatnot. But it just kind of made sense. And then maybe he got in too many fights at the school. So now he's like working in the city with like almost like a general population kind of students. It kind of makes sense where he is. And he sort of lost his magic. I don't know. To me, it made sense where Indy was. But yeah, that's my opinion where Indy is. But yeah.
What are you, Jonathan?
I was okay with it because it was a bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like, as much as I've sat here for the past 31 minutes and said that and berated all the brand new ideas that have been brought to a 40-year-old franchise, I do actually quite like, I still like a risk being taken, and I like, it's not still, he's not still this much loved professor with the young students falling.
We've lost you again. We've lost your audio. We've lost your audio again, Jonathan.
Yeah, he's not that womanizer anymore. Yeah.
I mean, he never really was a womanizer. I think that's taking it too far.
I kind of think he was.
He was not a womanizer. He wasn't hooking up with the students. He wasn't flirting with the students.
I thought Marion was a student. She was like underage. She would be like technically like 14.
No, I don't think they weren't like, she wasn't like a 14-year-old. He would have been.
Yeah, I'm pretty.
He would have been studying. He would not have been a teacher. He would have been studying under Professor Ravenwood when they met. Because Abner is her father. He was under Abner as a student. That's when they met, when he was a student.
So just like technical.
She might have been 16. He might have been 18. You know what I mean?
Okay.
I'm going to say I have watched Indiana Jones behind the scenes stuff before, and there is specific transcripts where George Lucas and Steven Spielberg and Lawrence Kasdan are talking about how Marion was underage.
No,
there's like specific transcripts.
Yes,
like she was a student though. Like there was like they were talking about that. That's in the transcripts of their discussions while writing the movie. So, she's probably a student, but he's a college student. She's probably a high school student. Yeah,
because that's when he meets. That's when he meets Abner.
There's a line where Marion says, "I was a child."
Yeah. We keep losing you. We keep losing your audio. I don't know why, buddy. Don't know why. So I mean, maybe it's a technicality, but I never saw her as Indy being a teacher abusing his position. I always saw them as being two kids, roughly. She's probably 16, he's probably 18. He's in university. Not that, but he's never really been. So I don't really see him as a womanizer. He's not really a womanizer. He doesn't.
I would kindly disagree because I think he was like probably 26 and she was like 14. There's a reason why their age group. I think so.
No,
that's how I saw it.
No, I never saw it that way. That's a bit too weird. Because he's only meant to be like what, 30, and like 10 years ago when he was with Abner, he would have been 20. And that's when he would have met her. So I don't think he wasn't her teacher. He wasn't her teacher. But
I just think it is because there's even a deleted scene where like there's this hot student trying to get to him like, oh, I need to talk to you, Indiana Jones, and he's like, no, I got to meet with the the CIA to get the Ark. So I don't know. I feel like he has been a womanizer. That's my opinion on the character.
Yeah, no, I would have to. There would have to be a moment in the movies where he's actually womanizing for me to agree, and I don't think in any of the 5 movies he's ever done that. I can't. He didn't do it in the Temple of Doom. They were consenting adults. They were consenting adults in Indy 3. and in Indy 4 he's back with Marion. So I'm like, yeah. What's going on? I think he's come back.
He's come back.
Can you hear
There
me?
he is. Yes.
Let me see if this. Nope.
I can hear you.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Sorry. Guys.
So okay, what I was thinking about the old man Indy thing at the very beginning was I don't like it in the way that it sort of it felt like an intentional undermining of Crystal Skull. It's like no one liked that movie, so we need to make sure we distance ourselves from that rather than try to do what wait, didn't he do Wolverine? Didn't James Mangold do the Wolverine? Because he did Logan.
Yeah.
So the Wolverine actually respects X-Men 3, which is one of the most awful X-Men movies of all time. It respects that after Logan has killed Jean, he's off on his own doing his own thing. You needed to have done something along those lines. And if he's married, then he's married. If he has a son, he has a son. Do they need to be there the whole time? No, they don't. Can you write around that? Yes, you can. So I think they could have done better with that. But if we are going to go with what they've done, I also sort of felt like they could have lent into... I don't think the theme of old age and regret was very strong. I think they could have done better with that. Because you have this opening where he's old and he seems kind of frustrated with his students who aren't paying attention. I'm like, why would a class of 30, 40 college students be that bored in class? Like, you're paying to be there. I've never been in any of my lectures where the whole class is bored. Maybe one or two people, but not the whole class.
Yeah.
In high school, maybe, not university. So that was weird. If he was teaching high school, fine, but he's not. And I thought what could have been fun is if there's a comment in Last Crusade where he says his dad is a teacher everyone hopes they don't get.
Yep.
And I'm like, that he could have become his dad. Maybe he becomes boring. Maybe he becomes the teacher nobody wants because he's past his prime. He's no longer having adventures. He's longing for the glory days where he had adventures. And that's why he's bored, because he's bored of just talking about this stuff without actually being able to go out there anymore and lean into that. Because the retirement party, like, where the hell did that come from? That was such a limp scene. I was like...
That could have been cut. That honestly could have been cut.
Yeah. I was shocked when that scene came on. I don't know. What do you think of the retirement, guys? Both of you.
I thought it was lame. But I want to agree with Red Letter Media. I think the opening scene, like, if you're going to change the opening scene, it should have been him dealing with modern technology and modern age. Like, he has to get on the real elevator, or he has to go down the stairs. He has to learn about using more technology. And I think that would be like a good intro. Like, oh God, I got to take the train. I got to catch the train. And it's like in the way, or like the car doesn't start or something, where like everything's not working for him because he's an old man and like he's not adjusting well to technology. And I think that would have been like a fun Indiana Jones thing, like dun, 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 dun. He finally got on the train or something like that. But yeah, with like the retirement party, like, it didn't quite make sense. Like, if that was his last day, why weren't the students like more excited? Like, oh my God, Mr. Jones, like, this is your last day.
Yeah.
It wasn't there. It just wasn't
He's
there.
talking
It didn't
about like their finale, their finals, and all that. So it's like, there's no way that's his last day. That's impossible for that to be his last day.
Yeah,
that didn't make any sense. So I really think that they could have lent into that, and I think that could have lent more to that. Because at the end of the movie, when he's like, I want to stay with Jesus, I'm like, I don't believe you want to stay with Jesus. No way. No way.
I think the retirement party stuff, it kind of felt like, how do we visually show someone's old? They're retiring. Right?
Yes.
It's like,
and we're giving them a clock.
It's like, and then, of course, he gives the clock away immediately, right? And that's it. There's never any other reference to the fact that this is the end of his career. It did. It felt a little bit tacked on. Either do it or don't do it, and it kind of felt that it went right in the middle. It's like, we can see that everybody knows that Harrison Ford is an 80-year-old man. Everybody knows that within the context of the movie. Indiana Jones is 70 years old. We know this. We know that. We understand it. We don't need to be spoon-fed the fact that he's old with something as lazy as he's also retiring, because that's what you do when you're old. It's not. I mean, like I said, I didn't necessarily have a problem with the fact that he is what he's doing and he is where he is as the character, because it means that's there's a line at the start of Kingdom of the Crystal Skull that says that Ray Winston goes, this isn't going to be easy, and then Indy goes, not as easy as it used to be, and that was all over the trailers. I remember.
Yeah.
And that, I thought that addressed aging a lot better than any of the stuff that we get in
Indy 4 15 years ago when he was a 60-year-old man. Did the aging thing way better than this one.
Absolutely.
It was really bizarre.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. I agree with that.
Because it was just a little bit more subtle, right?
Yeah.
It wasn't look how old I am because I'm retiring and that's how old I am, and it didn't land for me that.
No,
and I agree. I completely agree. I think they could have lent into it a lot better. We get a line when they're climbing the rocks saying that.
You mean that line at the very end of the movie?
Well, 75% through. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Because we were just talking about Crystal Skull. I think one of the best gags in Crystal Skull is that during my rewatch is when he tries to swing to the truck and then he gets back to it. I went, dang, I thought it was closer. I'm like, that's perfect.
Yeah,
yes,
absolutely.
That's perfect.
Absolutely that. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know. I agree. I just want to point out Shane Ford's comment. I was a child was just an old world way of saying she was a young adult who didn't know any better, probably the late teens, early 20s, not literally underage. As someone who writes historical fiction, I agree with you, Shane. I agree.
I see that point now because there's that movie High Sierra with the girl who's like 18 and Humphrey Bogart's old. That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Gatsby. It's all there. It's all there. So what did you guys think of Helena? Let me put it this way.
I'll let you go first.
Let me put it this way. Do you want to see a sequel with the adventures of Helena and Teddy?
Not particularly, no.
No, me neither.
Maybe. I'll say maybe.
I
thought it was fine. I wouldn't say no.
It wasn't. Do you know? I'm not a huge fan of Sophie Waller-Bridge. Phoebe Waller-Bridge. Sorry, Phoebe Waller-Bridge. I'm not a huge fan. I understand. I understand the appeal that she has. I understand the work that she does. It's just not for me. It's like saying, why do you not like apples when you like oranges? It's as simple as that. I actually thought she was okay in this. I don't necessarily want to see any more of the character because I don't really think that we got enough of the character to spark my imagination to want to find out more.
Yeah.
I don't. I think you said at the start, she's there for the quips. She's there to do the heavy lifting of the physical stuff because we've got an 80-year-old lead actor. Teddy,
cut him out of the film.
You can lose the character. He doesn't bring anything to it, and you can. There's no, and this is something that when again we've talked about this on this show. When I'm doing creative writing workshops and things like that, I say, when it comes to characters, how many is too many, how few is too little. If you can get to the end of the story and you can remove an entire character from it and that has no impact whatsoever on the outcome, then you've got to question whether the character needs to be there. Yeah. Because in the end, he doesn't even fly them back.
No. And I have to say also with that point, even though he flies a plane through the thing, he doesn't need to. Helena could have just done that scene. She could have followed them through the portal.
Yeah, she could have been the one who used to be a pilot. Yeah,
absolutely.
Leaving Indy to be a badass fighting the Nazis in that plane.
Absolutely.
Crashing
close
the plane
quarters
and jumping out himself. And then he's there thinking, well, I'm stuck here. I guess this is my life with Jesus. And then Helena lands and he's like, oh, good, I can get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
That's that I think could have worked better.
Or indeed have her land and still have the exact same conversation and he still ends up on the plane and she takes back off. I completely agree. I think it was it felt like an unnecessary touch.
I know I mentioned this in my review the other day. And what I felt was missing was Indy needed the other movies give him some sort of moral conundrum that he overcomes by the end to some degree. There's some sort of change. Indy 1, he's like, I don't believe in magic and hocus pocus. At the end of the movie, he's like, no, there's something fucking weird with this arc. Marion, close your eyes. He starts to believe, and at the end, he's like telling the CIA people, no, you don't understand what kind of power you're dealing with. And they're like, you're not going to touch it anymore. We got our top men on it.
Yep.
Temple of Doom. He's like, I understand the power of the rocks. He gets it. Grail, he understands that he's like, he needs to learn, he needs to let it go, can't have eternal life, blah, blah, blah. He overcomes that temptation. And I thought, okay, you have a movie about time travel. You have a big moment where he's like, if I could change time, I would save my son and save my marriage. Why did they not? That was a tee up. That's a setup.
Yeah.
Pay that off.
Yeah.
Give him they almost should have had the dial be like that Star Trek episode, where it's like the portal. The portal sends them back in time. I can't remember the name of the episode. I think it's the one that what's his face wrote, Harlan Ellison. But you almost could have done that where you see into the past.
Yeah. And
you could go through and you could F stuff up. I also think Archimedes should have actually been a time traveler. I think they actually should have just done it rather than him not be one. Like, just actually make him a time traveler. And
I mean, you guys will probably be able to explain this a lot better than I did. But am I right in saying that the dial only goes one way? It only goes to one time period, and that's so the reason that Archimedes invented it was to try and get help against the Romans.
They did say that line, and I thought that was dumb.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit much.
What does he think that? Like, what does he think the help's going to be? Like, I don't quite understand.
I think they just threw that line in there. I don't even know. It doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah,
because I mean, in fairness, up
go
until
back
that
and watch. Was it 80 yard? Do we actually see anybody's lips move? With
I don't even know. I think it's like off screen. Honestly, I honestly do. I think they were just like he made the dial.
It can only go one way.
The Denver Broncos. President Clinton.
Mr. Black. I think so. Like, oh man,
yeah. I think it could have been better. I really do. He needed I think Indy needed a stronger motivation for either wanting to stay in the past or to use the dial. I also think you could have used the dial in a way that emphasizes more about who Helena is, because basically she wants to kill Indiana Jones the whole time until he's shot, and then once he's shot, she's like, "Oh no, I want him to live. You need to live." Yeah. And I'm like,
it wasn't layered very well, was it? I mean, we got that tiny little moment after the tuk-tuk scene where she sort of, it's revealed that she kind of blamed him for not being there when Basil was away. And that's another thing as well. Like, what happened to Basil?
Like, he just died. He had a heart attack.
There's that sort of throwaway line in what is it, 51, when Indy's going in the car and she hands him the hat and he goes, "Oh, he'll be fine in a couple of days." But he clearly wasn't, right? He clearly, the man was clearly ill.
Knowing Mangold, he's leaning towards the he offed himself, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, like, again, that's it was touched on. But it should have been extrapolated a lot more. And going back to your original question, Luke, do I want to see a follow-up series or spin-off series with her character in it? Well, no, because what is a character? Who is it? Is it just going to be a rehash of Indiana Jones? No, I'm not interested.
What would have worked? What would have worked is to not have this character in there whatsoever, and to replace her with Short Round. Can you imagine? Because her life, working with the underground, all that kind of stuff. It's 40-year-old Short Round comes Indiana Jones with a problem, and he's not seen Indiana Jones since maybe a couple years after the Temple of Doom. They parted for some reason, and then like that would have had emotional resonance.
It also would have added a little bit more to Teddy, because Teddy's pretty much Short Round.
No, you cut Teddy out entirely. We don't need Short Round. Doesn't need a Short Round.
Could fly. Short Round could fly the plane.
But it would have. He's acting the father figure to Teddy the way that Indy kind of was to him, but
you could, but like, imagine like Short Round is like, okay, like he comes across a problem, and the only person he knows who can either something is being sold on the black market, and he's like, this is a big deal. The only person I know or knew who would care or know that this is important is Indiana Jones. Yeah. Where is Indiana Jones? Yeah. And that I just think that would have given more oomph to Indy going on, because the thing is, like, the other Indiana Jones movies, which I guess we can start diving into a bit more now, is as I was watching them all, by 17 to 20 minutes in every single one, the MacGuffin is established, but not just that. Why it's a threat.
Yeah.
Why the Ark? What's his face? Brody is like, the army carrying the Ark is invincible.
Yep.
And you're like, okay, shit. The Nazis will be invincible if they're
Yeah.
carrying the Ark. You understand the dilemma in Temple of Doom very quickly. Why there's no rock. Their land is desert. Is barren. The children are all been abducted.
Yeah.
You understand the urgency, and then you also get the dilemma with Indy 3, and that is your dad's searching for the Grail. Well, I don't really believe in the Grail, but he's missing.
Yeah.
You need to go find your missing father. Oh shit. Okay, so the stakes are then set up, and then they keep raising. Whereas with the stupid dial, it's really not until they get on the plane that we understand what the drama is with the dial. What do you guys think? What's your take on the dial compared to like the other MacGuffins? Did you feel the danger of it early on, or like not? Like, what's the vibe?
I think the danger was like that they could mess up time if they have it, because they're not sure how it's going to work. And then when they finally see it, when it's all put together, they're like, "Oh, okay, it's this, that, and the other." And then you find out what the plan is. Like, "Oh, geez, he doesn't want to just help Hitler; he wants to get rid of them and take over."
Yeah, I think that, again, we're talking about layering it in, aren't we? We're talking about layering within the sort of story. The storytelling of it is that we don't actually find out what Voller wants to do if he gets his hands on time travel. Up until that point, it's just left up to the audience's imagination. It's like, what if the Nazis get time travel? Well, okay, that's bad enough, but you're right. You know, we need to be told exactly what's going on. What's this guy's motivation? What is it he's going to do if he gets his hands on some sort of time travel device? And then you're right. It's like the plane's already taken off. They're about to go through the portal, and that's only then that we find out that he's going to go back into 1939 to assassinate Hitler.
Yeah.
Which you know, like as a concept, as a motivation, I think is fine. I think that that as a villain story is, and the idea that he's, you know, it's a twist. It's you know, he's much more ardent to the cause than he is to the man, to the leader and stuff like that. That's fine. I understand that, but don't do that with 20 minutes to go. Like that's you know, don't. If you watch that in any other movie, if you watch that in any TV show, it's not going to stand, and it shouldn't stand here just because it's an Indiana Jones movie. Far from it. Far from it. It's gold standards, right? It's yeah. Just tell us what it is. I mean, we could have been told that. We could have been told that on the train. We could have very easily been told that on the train. Very, very easily told that you know that Voller's looking for the other half because mistakes have been made. Weirdly, there are quite a few scenes that are in, and I know this happens all the time. There are quite a few scenes that and dialogue in the trailers that don't feature in the final movie. There's a scene that I remember from the trailer where they're in the tombs and the catacombs, and they're trying to remove a giant boulder at one point. But there's also there's a line, I'm pretty sure, from Mads Mikkelsen's Voller. It's where he says, you know, mistakes were made. I don't remember hearing that in the dialogue in the movie. And again, if that was added in 1944, when everything's fallen apart, obviously for the Nazis, and you know, we would have known right away what it was. But you're right, up until that point, if anything, I started thinking at the beginning, is Voller going to turn out to be maybe like almost a semi-sympathetic character, that he wants to go back and change things for the better? I don't know. But obviously he wasn't, because we then fast forward to 69 and he's horrible to that waiter, and then we find out that he wants to go back, and very,
Again,
very convoluted.
It was one of those things where, like, going back and watching Crystal Skull, and I'm like, look, I know it's aliens, I know it's interdimensional beings, but
you know their goals.
But I know their goals, and I understand the threat. The threat is that if the Russians get to El Dorado, they will have unmeasurable knowledge that will help them take over the world. That's a good enough threat. I understand why they need to get that skull away from
Captain Iron Dog's going to love this.
But like the last thing about Dial of Destiny, unless there's any other things you guys want to talk about, is the henchmen. Now, henchmen vary in the indie movies. There's always like the main villain, maybe a side villain, and then like guy he has to fight. I really couldn't work out what the F was going on with the henchmen around Voller. I don't understand the role of Agent Disco. Like what was she about? What's her, the CIA agent? Like she's just sort of there and then she's killed off. And I'm like, wait, you just watched what's his name? Kabler, the actor Holbrooks. You just watched this guy gun down 2 people in a school, and you're like fine with it. And for some reason, you blame Indiana for these murders, and now he's wanted for murder for a reason. And
that whole CIA involvement didn't quite marry up with me.
No, because like
so Voller's meant to have been instrumental in the Apollo missions.
Yes.
And he's meant to be getting commended by the president.
Yes.
So is she babysitting him then? Is she the one? But the CIA wouldn't be responsible for something like that.
No, I felt like she was the babysitter. But what didn't make sense to me is, why does he have the big tall guy, and why does he have Kabler, who seems to be more of a mercenary? What was your take on them, Frank? Because I was like, is he a mercenary working with the CIA? What's going on?
So I think he helped them build the rocket, and they're like, if you help us build the rocket, we're going to give you some help. You want to find this dial of destiny? Sure, we're going to help you out. You helped us get to the moon first, fine, then whatever. But I think there was a character that was sort of written out or deleted, because you see him once, and I'm like, oh, who's this guy? But you never see him again. It's the guy on the crutches.
Oh,
he comes out the elevator, and he's like, what's going on? What's here? He's not from like the rest of the movie. But I think something tells me he might be a senator or something like that who's backing this guy up. Maybe Mads Mikkelsen promised him something like, with this time travel thing, we can go back and even do more technology or whatever. Who knows? Or go into the future and see what we can steal from the future. Who knows? Because there's that guy who comes out. I'm like, where the hell did he go? He like shows up for like one scene and like, that's it. But I just saw it as sort of like he has his mercenary buddies. They're all probably like, Nazi dudes, and they're just with him. But I think it's just like the CIA just doing some backdoor stuff.
Well, I mean, I thought there's the I think it's the introduction scene to is it Kebler? Kebler's the blonde guy with the mustache.
Kebler.
He's learning German in the suite. So
right in front of Agent Disco as well. Like
that's what made me think.
He might as well just be reading Mein Kampf in front of her.
Precisely. That's what made me think he was just some mercenary. But then we later find out on the plane that he's a full-blown Nazi, as in like he's happy to travel back to 1939.
To me. Yeah.
So like, does it just so happen to be that he's he was a mercenary that always wanted to be a Nazi, or has he always been a Nazi and he just never let, that could have been very,
what's something they probably wrote out. It's probably in the script, but they're probably like, no, we got to soften the edges. Maybe they're just a bunch of racists, because it is the 60s.
Could be that. Yeah. Could very well be that. Yeah, absolutely.
But I guess lean into it then. Like,
yeah. But I think they soft the edges though,
Temple of Doom would have done it.
No, Raiders would have done it. Raiders is totally like revenge against Nazis. This is like they sort of came back to it with like making them like harsh villains, but they didn't make them harsh enough. Like if they established that they're racist, that they didn't care about anybody. I don't know. There's like little things you could do in this movie and be like, oh geez, these are probably even worse than what he thought before, because they don't care about anybody.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's days later. I mean, I don't think my previous review was a outstanding, glowing review. I think I was just pretty much like, it was enjoyable. It was serviceable. I had fun watching it, and I still had fun watching. I'm not backtracking on that. It was still enjoyable. I still enjoyed watching it, but I just walked out thinking, if I never see that movie again, I'm okay. Whereas I do want to go back and watch the other indie movies, even if I want to watch Crystal Skull, even if it's only with riff tracks. Like, I still like watching that movie in some fashion or another. Whereas this, I'm like, I don't know if I need this movie anymore. This is why I'm kind of calling it an unnecessary but inoffensive addition to the legacy. It's almost like young Indiana Jones. I know it exists. I don't really need to see it. It doesn't really add.
See that's. I mean, I do feel the same. Obviously, I'm still in the wake of having just seen it and sleep deprived and all the rest of it. But I do. I'm in no hurry to see it again. But again, that kind of goes back to what I was talking about earlier on. Is that this is a franchise in that initial decade that they made the original 3 movies. They hit on something. They hit on a way of storytelling. And let's also not look past the talent behind the camera that we've been talking about already. Like, it's not like the Indiana Jones movies came about at the tail end of Steven Spielberg's career, or indeed the very, very beginning of Steven Spielberg's career. You're talking about the Indiana Jones movies are intrinsic to Spielberg's success and are as much a staple of his success as anything else that he's ever done in his career. You know, when you think about the movies that he made in that 10-year period, excluding the 3 Indiana Jones movies, you know, these films are part of the cultural zeitgeist the world over, as is the Indiana Jones movies. So, you know, you're when you then fast forward to 2008, you're never going to really be able to recapture all of that. And then, of course, when you fast forward another 15 years, and you don't have that massive element of the franchise already there, then, you know, you're fighting a really, really hard uphill battle. I do definitely think it's a movie. I definitely think it's an Indiana Jones movie.
It's definitely a movie. It is
It's
definitely
a movie. It's not a short film. It's not a TV series. It definitely ticks that box for me. I definitely think it's a movie, an Indiana Jones movie that's been made for 2023 and the 2023 audience. And similarly, the way that I think Crystal Skull was, maybe we didn't acknowledge it at the time. I know I certainly didn't acknowledge it at the time. It was made for a 2008 audience.
Oh yeah,
you know,
I agree with that.
And I think that
I'm mixed on that, but maybe
if that's what the job it was meant to do, if that's what its job was, then it's done it right, and I'm happy with that. I'm happy that I saw it. I had a great night out of the movies with my wife.
So would you recommend going to the cinema to see it? Is it worth paying for? Like, I didn't pay for it. I have a membership and I have a free ticket, so I didn't have to pay to go see it.
No ticket.
I'm happy with it. I think it was a you know, I remember being on this show, Luke, and talking about The Last Crusade, and one of the things that I've always said about Last Crusade is that it's a big, silly night out of the movies. And that's what this felt as well. It might not be my big silly, it might not be my ideal big silly night out of the movies, but it still was. And that's what these movies are. And if we strip away all the other stuff, that's what Indiana Jones movies are. They're blockbuster cinema. They defined what blockbuster cinema was in many ways. And I still think, has the world moved on from that type of storytelling? Has the world moved on from that type of movie? And does that mean that when you try and segue that type of movie into this world, does it work all the time the way that it did? No, it absolutely doesn't. But I still liked it. I'm still glad I went to see it in the cinema. I'm still glad I saw it on the big screen.
That sort of leads to the next point. I want to read Casey's message. Disney keeps butchering all the classics. You guys broke it down in the nicest way possible. We don't hate the movie. I don't love it. I don't know if I don't feel like Jonathan loved it.
Is it lovable?
Frank, you like it, right? Like, you don't.
I like it. I don't think I love it because I did my ranking finally, and I don't 100% like it. I love it, but I think as we're talking about it, the thing I'm realizing about it, it's the reason why it's not as good as the other ones is because Harrison Ford is old, and he can't do all the stuff that you need to do for this type of movie. You're adjusting this movie for him, and doing that, it takes away what makes these movies what you want to go to the movies. So that's the reason why this doesn't work. If you were to throw in like Bradley Cooper at his age now, you could have the best movie ever. Honestly, because you were talking about like maybe this is not the right time for the movies. No, I think it's just not the right time for Harrison Ford. You know, like if we did this like 15, 20 years ago, I think this would have been like an awesome movie. Like he could probably done more action. It would have been great, but like,
because he was really active in Crystal Skull, and that was something else that took away from that. I was like, oh, he's actually
he was more
moving in this movie.
I kind of think he was more active in Crystal Skull than Last Crusade. Honestly, it was weird when I rewatched Crystal Skull.
There's a lot of action. There's a lot of action in that movie, and definitely comparing it to this, I was like, oh, I mean, he's basically just, and that's the thing again. Even like the action scenes in the older movies, they are way more memorable. The set pieces are way more memorable, and I walked away thinking, he just basically drives the car around really fast, and that's it.
Is that not endemic though, Luke, of movie making nowadays anyway? You know, I remember watching Jurassic World in the cinema.
Oh well, that's
God,
another
God help me.
shitstorm.
God help me, right? And I actually think we might have talked about this before, but
Maybe.
you know, when you compare it to Jurassic Park, and you had that physical model of the T-Rex foot landing with the
Yes.
shot behind it, you know, that foot was physically there. It was
Yes.
a physical animatronic, whereas the helicopter crashing into the giant dome.
Yes.
In Jurassic World, there's no weight there, right?
The
There's
problem,
no weight because it doesn't exist, and you know that. But that's. I watched Ant-Man Quantumania on the plane when I was flying back from the UK a couple of days ago, and it's just like watching a video game, right?
Yeah.
It's a video game that you don't get to play.
Yeah.
So what's the
the problem with Jurassic Park movies is they haven't been really good since 1.
Well, yeah.
One is the best. 2, they just are diminishing returns.
Absolutely.
Along the way, and you know,
but yeah, they keep making more money. That's the thing. That's funny.
Yeah, and so I do think I genuinely think that if you have the right creative team behind it and the right creative talent and studio mother effing producers get their hands away, you know, and let the writers, let the director do the thing, create the story. You know, Spielberg and Lucas, they were at a point in their early career where it's like, okay, well, they've just done Star Wars and, you know, Lucas and like Jaws and that kind of stuff. So yeah, we'll let them just make whatever film they want to make.
Yeah.
And look what they did.
Yeah.
You know, half the time nowadays, and this is where I'm beginning to wonder if this is part of this is franchise fatigue, because Frank and I were just briefly talking about it before we went live, and that is every other major blockbuster movie that came out this summer hasn't done very well. Like Flash is an epic fail. Indiana Jones is looking like it's going to bomb. It's not, you know, I think it made like 130 million worldwide out of a 300
That's
million.
Worse than
yeah.
That's worse than Flash. Didn't Flash make more than that?
It might have by now, but like Flash is also earning pennies now. It's not doing very well. I know that Transformers Rise of the Beast didn't do hot. Fast X didn't do very hot. And I do feel like I mean, like, you know, this reminds me of like a summer of 2016 where you had, what did you have? Like, you had Jurassic World, you had X-Men Dark Phoenix, you had probably a Star Wars movie.
Remember that?
But
that's 2015. 2015 was Jurassic World and Star Wars. And what else came out? I think it was Civil War. It was 2016, I think.
Maybe, yeah. But you have
Civil War and Batman versus Superman came out the same year.
Yeah, maybe that was it. And again, you have all these. Yeah, that was it. Batman v Superman. All these movies that aren't really hitting. Not Dark Phoenix, Apocalypse, X-Men Apocalypse.
Remember that as well.
Yeah, so that all of these movies didn't do very hot, and it's like, is it that people just don't? I wonder if Disney misfired here and put too much stock in Indiana Jones in the way that DC put way too much stock in Michael Keaton. Now, we all love Michael Keaton as Batman. He is our Batman. But my niece, who is the prime demographic, and my nephew don't know who he is. They don't care about The Flash. They don't care about Michael Keaton from 1989.
And the workers at GameStop have no idea who Keaton is.
Yes.
I don't know. I'll tell my story. So I've been looking for the Michael Keaton Batman figure for weeks, and in order to save me a trip, I called GameStop. I'm like, "Hi, do you have the Michael Keaton Flash by McFarlane Toys from the movie Flash?" And they're like, "Can you explain that again?" And I was like,
"What's a Michael Keaton?"
Yeah, exactly. What's a Michael Keaton? And they're like, "Well, we have the blue one." I was like, "Okay, you don't know any idea what Keaton is." Like, I got to go there and see myself. But yeah, this is like a 20-year-old kid, you know, like maybe 25. They don't have no idea who Michael Keaton is.
Yeah, yeah. And I really do think that there is the problem of, it's up to the parents to show this to the kids. It's not in the zeitgeist as much anymore. It's not UHF, you know, where UHF is parroting Rambo and Indy and all, you know, that era is gone. Like, I sometimes think Disney doesn't realize how old some of these franchises are. I think Indy was one of them. Or Indy, the sweet spot to do another Indy movie was 2008. because that movie made money.
Mm-hmm.
It was just not what people were expecting.
And movies were still movies back then because there were events where you went to the theater to go there. Nowadays, it's like I can just wait 3 months and it'll be on my Vudu or streaming. I don't have to go to the theater.
Yes. Yeah. So I think that is also part of the problem. They might have, I know they probably marketed the hell out of this movie, but they're clearly not reaching the younger audience who just want to just go to the movies. The teenagers at the weekend who just want to go. Like I was a teen when 4 came out, and I was like, "Oh, let's go, guys! Went and saw the movie."
But it's a wait, isn't it? It's a long time. It's a lot of history. It's a lot of backstory. It's a lot of years. It's a lot of decades to start to be bundling along to expect a younger audience to do their research before they just go and see a film.
That's right. I got a funny story. So at my screening at the end, when Marion comes in, we have the whole back of the audience goes, "Aw!" They're clearly fans of the audio, like the movie. And then, like after everything quiets down, the person clearly behind me says, "Who's that?" They had no idea who Marion was, and I started laughing. I couldn't help myself. I just laughed at them.
That's when Indiana Jones punched them. No ticket. Like that
respect.
Is so sad. That's so sad.
But it's sort of like that with a lot of movies these days, because I remember I saw Solo, and when Darth Maul's on screen, everyone knows who Darth Maul is, but the kid next to me was like, "Who's Darth Maul?" It's like, what the hell? It's not even that old. It was like at that point, it's probably 20 years old at that point. But they didn't know who Darth Maul was.
Yeah, I guess you have to be knowledgeable. You have at least seen the prequels. But if you've not watched the cartoons, the numbers of cartoons, and maybe maybe a kid wouldn't know. I don't know. I mean, like I have no desire to show the prequels to my kid when she's old enough. I have no desire to do that. I'll show the originals.
All the kids are into Grimace videos these days.
These Grimace videos are ridiculous. These Grimace Shake videos are so stupid.
They need to make a movie. The kids will go. Make it for $20 million. It'll make 60. It'll go.
I don't want to talk too much about this because I'm talking about it on Wednesday. But what's interesting though is like you have another franchise like Scream that is just churning shit out still, and people
they're still making money.
Like why is it that because when did the first Scream come out? 1996.
96.
And so it's like Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible, Scream are two like almost 30-year-old franchises that have continued to make money and be profitable. Is it because they have managed to make a new sequel with the time gaps are less?
Is it maybe a relevance? Is it maybe a cultural relevance element of it? You watch the latest Mission Impossible movie and it will be bang up to date with its technology. It will be bang up to date with its references. It'll be bang up to date. It doesn't matter that Tom Cruise is a 50, 60-year-old man.
He's 61 today, I think.
61. Happy birthday.
Yeah, it's his birthday. Happy birthday, Tom.
Happy birthday, Tom.
Yeah, I hope you're having a lovely day. I'm glad that you're watching and you've taken our birthday messages to heart. But he's making references. He's dressed the way that a young man would dress. The technology's bang up to date. I guess it's the same with Bond, right?
And he brings in new blood in every entry.
Exactly, precisely that.
Yes.
Scream. I imagine it's exactly the same. I've never been a massive. I can't remember the last Scream movie that I don't even think I've ever watched one all the way through. But you take something like Indiana Jones, which is inherently set in the past anyway.
Yes.
What's it got to draw upon? It's got to draw upon itself. It's got to draw upon its own back catalogue. There we go. Face. So you're already on the back foot when you're looking to a younger audience. Now, the argument I guess there is, well, that's not the audience's fault. Of course, it's not the audience's fault. It's the challenge of the filmmakers to make sure that film is memorable and it wins that audience over. That's the whole point of it. You can't just have nostalgia for nostalgia's sake. You really can't have that. That's lazy writing. It's lazy production. You can't just rely on the fact that the audience, it's only going to be men aged between 30 and 45 who remember when Michael Keaton was Batman, and in fact was maybe one of only 2 Batmen that they'd ever known, whereas now we've had God knows how many Batmen. I also think that's a problem. I also think, particularly with Batman, I think that there are too many. I think there's been too many actors cast and recast throughout it. It's the same with Superman now as well, of course. I think that's become, in the same period from 1989 to now, we've had more Batman actors than we've had James Bond across a 6-decade period, you know, which is, but that's endemic of the culture that we live in, right? That's how it works. That's the culture that we live in. So I think with your Mission Impossible and your Scream and your Fast and Furious, particularly Fast and Furious, I think you have the advantage of it being set contemporarily, and the filmmakers know, and the filmmakers they get in, they just have to make a new movie. That's all they have to do. They don't have to, and that's what audiences are clearly going in to see. It's interesting. I mean, I don't necessarily agree with it. I don't think that you should, you know, I'm not saying that you shouldn't make contemporary movies. But I also don't think that you should rely entirely on the audience's homework or indeed age to enjoy a film. Right?
I think the main thing that's missing today is there's very little new IP. There's if you think when we were all kids, like
I agree.
There were sequels to and things like that out there, but there was so much new stuff coming out. We were constantly seeing something new, some new hero, some new action movie.
That's I mean, again, a classic example of that is Moonraker from the Bond franchise. Now, at the end of Spy Who Loved Me, you've got the classic stinger that says, this is the end of The Spy Who Loved Me, but James Bond will return in for your eyes only. So that comes out in about 75, 76. But they changed it. They changed the order of the next movie that they were going to make to Moonraker because it had Moon in the title. And Star Wars was such a massive success, and everything needed to be sci-fi for the next 4, 5, 6 years. So they made it's Bond in space, and then they bumped For Your Eyes Only back another 2 years or year, I think it is. Now there's a great example of it, of you know, being a reactionary filmmaking to what's been popular, but it's also a great example of new stuff being brought about through one massive success, which you don't get anymore, right? You don't, like, it's not like we're going to see a sudden splurge of archaeological and relic finding movies because Indiana Jones came out. Or indeed,
Imagine.
But then when Raiders came out, you did. You know, you've got a
They've tried because they've tried with Tomb Raider recently in the last 5 years. They've tried and it didn't work.
Precisely that. But you're right. You know, then you go back to Star Wars, obviously being a massive success throughout the 80s. And how many endless sci-fi movies did we get? Because like I said, Moonraker, obviously you've got Masters of the Universe were there. Star Trek started up in their game, obviously after the motion picture. You know, you've got all of these things that are born out of it, but you're right. Instead of getting more of that, we just get Fast 11. We just get, you know, another Batman. We just get another Ant-Man. We just get another Captain America's in the works with Harrison Ford in it as Thunderbolt Ross. So it's a completely different culture. We talked about it before we came on air. I don't just necessarily think it's franchise fatigue, of which it exists. I think it's blockbuster fatigue. I genuinely do think it's blockbuster fatigue. And we talked about it before we came on air. I just want to sit down and watch a movie. We're talking about Harrison Ford. Harrison Ford made loads of these little $30-40 million movies in the 80s to 90s. The Fugitive's a great example.
That's how I'm a fan of him. That's how I'm a fan of Harrison Ford.
Right. Air Force One's another great example. And then there's all the stuff.
Presumed Innocent.
Presumed Innocent. Sabrina.
Working Girl.
Clear and Present Danger.
Patriot Games.
No, these movies were $30-40 million, and they're going up against other $30-40 million movies, and they get a return of, like, say, $60-70 million. Now, this isn't a new thing, by the way. This has been going on in Hollywood for the last 20 years. I miss all that.
Yeah.
But it means that every time that you go to the cinema, or you sit down and watch a movie like Quantum Mania, or I watched John Wick 4 as well, and it was like, you know, I'm watching this because I know that they're going to do something else. This is just a stepping stone to the next thing. But I already watched something that happened that set this one up. Do you know what I mean? I already watched Ant-Man, or I already watched whatever it was, Multiverse of Madness, to set this one up, and I already watched Loki to set this up. But this is just setting something else up, and on and on and on and on and on and on. You know, I think it's having a really, really detrimental effect on audience appreciation, and just general cinema. I think that's it. The gulf between, you know, indie cinema and everything else is so wide now that it used to be layered.
I really thought back in the day, I mean, I don't know what you think about this, Frank, but I thought, like, back in the day, like when Deadpool first came out, which you know was well known for not costing a lot of money. and it looked good, had some good action, and made a lot of money. I sort of thought, oh, are we going to return to the $70 million movie action?
Little movies. Yeah. Little movies. Yeah.
I think they should do that at Warner Brothers. I think they learned their lesson with The Flash. And just like, how about we just make tons of small ones? Because I think Universal is secretly doing this. Because I think Universal did like, I think they did Megan. And I think they did like Cocaine Bear, which made a lot of money. It's like, if you do those small movies, and I think they're going to do that stupid movie that I find funny. It's Strays, where the talking dogs. That looks like a cheap movie. So I'm guessing they're making these like small budget movies that are going to make money so they can pay for their Fast X and all of that. But I think Universal's doing it, but like Warner Brothers is just like spinning their tires, spending all their money, on these like big movies, and they're not, they're putting all their eggs in one basket when they shouldn't be. They should be like making like 5 different movies for one Flash movie.
Yeah. Yes. Biff makes a good point. Is the Joker's budget was $50 million, but that's like one movie that was like a normal priced movie versus the slew of Wonder Womans and Justice Leagues and all that nonsense.
And I think it worked because of that, quite frankly. I mean, I enjoyed Joker, but a lot of it was because they clearly didn't have the money to spend on this much bigger everything's a thing.
Frank, you were watching the was it the making of or the behind the scenes of Raiders earlier today?
Yes.
I watched a little, I was gonna say I watched a little bit of that as well, but I was interested to note like what they were doing with time and money. What did you like comparing it to Dial of Destiny?
The thing I noticed about that movie, with the behind the scenes, is that Spielberg was in hot water because his movie 1941 flopped.
Yeah. And
George Lucas backed him up on this. He's the one who's like, I'm going to help you out, buddy. I'm not going to make this movie without Steven Spielberg, because no one wanted to touch Spielberg because I think he went over budget and schedule and Jaws. And then 1941 flopped. So nobody wanted to work with Spielberg because he was a risk. But then he went to Michael Eisner at Paramount, and they worked out a deal, and they made that movie, and they storyboarded every sequence, and they were ahead of schedule. They made sure everything was like practiced, rehearsed before they filmed it. And you could tell like Spielberg's like, being imaginative and all that. But you could tell like George Lucas is like the freaking gangster behind the things, because he's just like standing there making sure everything's all right. I'm not even. You watch behind the scenes. He's just like he's just standing there like no one messes with my boy here. My boy wants to make seriously, like George Lucas is so like he's like, you know what, I want to make this movie just because I want to see it. Doesn't matter if you guys want to see it. It's like I want to see it, and like he is so into that. And I think that's the difference. Is like if you have a director. I've been saying this on my podcast all the time because I always bring the attention to Wes Anderson and Michael Bay. Like if you have these great directors, but if you hone them into a lower budget, they'll give you magic. Like in early Michael Bay, I'm talking like Bad Boys, Armageddon, The Rock. Those are good movies because he was wrangled in. He was wrangled in. Yeah. But if you give them a huge budget, they'll get out of hand. Like Wes Anderson, early days, Rushmore, Royal Tenenbaums, Bottle Rocket. Those are good. But when he starts going too crazy, it's like, oh, you're writing down your audience a little bit. But like, I like when big directors are limited. Like a few years ago, I think it was like 2020, 2022, forget what year, but Ambulance, a nice mid-budget movie by Michael Bay. Excellent. I love that movie. And I wish there was more mid-budget movies like that. And because like it makes the people more creative, and that I think that needs to come back. And I think like Crystal, what is this movie called? Dial Destiny. Dial Destiny needs to like go back to the roots of like being an old B movie, like low budget, bring it back down to that and make it entertaining and stuff.
Do you know the sad thing is that I don't think there was any reason why they couldn't have done that, because you think about the Disney buying over of Lucasfilm. The big landmark for that was Star Wars, right? And they've done what with Star Wars what they've done with Star Wars. It was almost like they got Indiana Jones as a franchise, a much loved franchise, as part of that bargain, and they could have made that the side project. But of course, they've not made it the side project, have they? We've had this shoved down our throats for the last year and a half. With interviews, with hype and TV spots all over the place. They could have done it. They could have done it. They could have made it on the side while all the other Star Wars stuff and all the other Marvel stuff was all happening at Disney. And it's like, well, here we go. By the way, here's another Indiana Jones movie, right? That you might not necessarily have wanted, might not necessarily have asked for, but we've made it, and we've made it well. But that's not the case. I don't know what the budget was for this movie. Was it $300 million?
300 million.
Right. I mean,
which
that's
doesn't
not going to
include
work.
the marketing.
That's not going to work. That's not what Indiana Jones is.
No.
It was
Well,
never that.
That's what I was loving. That's what I loved about the behind the scenes stuff, is because there's a line where I think it's either Lucas or Spielberg who's like, we basically want to do it fast and dirty, like really really cheap graphics. They don't want to, not cheap graphics, but they just want they're not going to blow the budget on
and they did less setups. That's right.
Yeah. And it's great, and the film is great for it. But you get to this movie that you just so much CGI smeared everywhere. Yeah. And honestly, some of the CGI was what I didn't like about Crystal Skull back in the day, and still have issues with at times. It's like you lent into the easiness of CGI when Indiana Jones was never about CGI adventure. It was about a tangible world. The things that felt real. A couple times you got some fake backgrounds in the old movies, but
and the dummies,
they look it. I would much rather watch that than watch some of the new stuff. And I do think weirdly enough, the color correction made some of the CGI stuff look more real this time around. It's really bizarre how the color correction
I gotta get that 4K. It sounds so good.
I hope I'm not overhyping it, but I was legit like, oh, this is kind of a real movie and a real Indiana Jones movie. Like before, I was just like, oh, this green, not T. Hamill, I know, part-time, there are bad lines in it. There are bad lines in it. There are bad silly moments. I think but this is the thing. The monkey scene is ridiculous. I hate it. But
Justice for Monkey.
But that scene still is in my mind, and I can't think of any scene from Dial of Destiny that's like, oh yeah, remember that action scene? It's like, no, they're all just driving around in cars really chaotically.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
I do like the horse chase. I thought that was nice.
I guess the horse chase down the subway and stuff. Yeah.
Because he's sort of like racing against technology. I don't know.
But then we've also that was also in the trailers, right? We'd already seen that.
Mm-hmm. And also done better in Last Crusade. Yeah.
Oh, of course, absolutely. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And even Raiders actually, because he chases the Nazi van with the Ark in the on the horse at one point, and then he jumps. I mean, I think that once again, the studio has made it into a thing when it didn't need to be a thing, right?
Yeah.
And look, you and I have talked about this on this show about the Mandalorian and Star Wars and stuff like that. Everything's got to be a thing. Everything's got to be a thing. Make that a thing. That's got to be a thing. Everything's got to be. Everything you see has got to be something.
Yeah.
When the original movies weren't like that, but then again, movies weren't like that, right?
No.
Movies weren't like that. Now, there's an argument to be made that, well, actually, do you know something? You look at Lucas by the time that he rolls around to Return of the Jedi, in particular, in 82, 83. And you've just got every character that's thrown in Jabba's palace, and then on Home One when they're doing the briefing, and then all the X-wing and A-wing pilots and stuff, and they're all a thing, I guess. But at least they're not battle droids excusing themselves as they nudge past a prisoner, which is what it resorted to by the time we get to Revenge of the Sith. And I think this is just another victim of that. But I mean, when you told me there that's $300 million to make that Indiana Jones movie, come on, that's an affront to what this movie franchise used to be, right? It's the antithesis of what it is, and it's only that amount of money, because they feel that they've got to make it a thing, right? But it doesn't have to be a thing,
because I mean, I was alive when the third one came out. I was not alive when the first two came out, but I also feel like tentpole movies were a very different thing back in the 80s.
Yes.
Very different thing. They weren't. The target wasn't $1 billion. Star Wars effed everything up. When the Force Awakens came out, made $1 billion. Hollywood was like, every major movie needs to make $1 billion now.
Yeah.
And it's like, it doesn't need to make $1 billion. It doesn't need to cost that much money to make these movies. Like, if you rein it in, the thing is, like, this is what's interesting is when you have a movie in a story where you have to really think about your budget and use things wisely. Use your time, use your money wisely. You're going to, I think a lot of times you're going to write and tell a better story.
Yeah.
than just, oh, we can just throw more money at it. Like, I don't know. I'm quite, as time goes on, as the days go by, I'm less and less enthralled with Dial of Destiny. I feel like there's a lot of cracks to it.
Yeah.
Both narratively and just behind the camera.
Yeah.
That it's like, it's funny. I'm pretty sure I said on my last podcast, I don't even count Crystal Skull as part of the indie movies, but I'm now kind of thinking, I'd much rather count that than I'd count Dial.
Well, one thing I will give it, and it's just on the back of what we've been talking about there, is that what I've always said about the Bond movies, 60 years old, whatever it is, 25 movies, they serve as cellular time capsules from the era that they're made in. So Casino Royale, great example of it. It's got parkour. It's got that great parkour chase, 20 minutes into it. Yep. And that was everywhere in 2006, right? Yep. You then fast forward to Quantum of Solace, and it's all about oil and industry and big business and stuff. And again, very, very relevant to the time that it came out, and so on and so forth. And you can go all the way back to all of them, and that's what's going on, particularly the Cold War set ones. And obviously, the Lucas and Spielberg had the concept for Indiana Jones that they wanted to make a Bond movie without the gadgets, and Raiders is those two making a movie. Then Temple is them making the movie that's a follow-up to it. They then fast forward 5 or 6 years because they're busy. They make Last Crusade, which is set in 89, and then we go ahead to 2008, obviously, for Crystal Skull, and then now 2023. And actually, just like I've been saying, do they serve that same Bond purpose in the sense that they sum up the era that they've been made in? Because the Indiana Jones movies of the 1980s are a staple of 80s culture. They're a staple of it. The character, the language, the iconography of it, that is much part of 80s culture as the Terminator, as Star Wars, as but
it's a part of 80s culture, but it's very much a throwback. It's very much imitating another. It's imitating their childhood. So it's a weird thing in that it is a staple of 80s culture, but it's also that pullback.
Of course, but is that what's missing from Crystal Skull and Dial of Destiny? Is that the less maybe so with Lucas and Spielberg, who made Crystal Skull, but with Mangold, is he? Should he have made Dial of Destiny to that throwback to Raiders, Temple of Doom, and Last Crusade, as opposed to just making it the movie that it is?
Yes. I think he missed the cultural relevance of what they were doing with the original three. What's your thoughts, Frank?
I think he missed. He should have made it for him, because I'm thinking about it. This whole series, it sort of reflects the filmmakers and people making the movie, because I feel like with Raiders, it's about people taking risks. Raiders is all about that. Temple of Doom is people who are broken. They're all going through divorces. They're all going through a dark part of their lives, and that reflects in Temple of Doom, where they sort of want to have fun, but it's still dark. And then 1989, everyone's comfortable. Everyone wants to sit back. Everyone wants to relax, and they want to have fun. just like one more last adventure. Let's just because it's very laid back. Last Crusade's very laid back. It's I consider it a dad movie, so I'm guessing they all are parents by then. They all have families, so they're at a different mindset. And then 2008 comes along, and I feel like that's like, let's get the band back together. Let's do our reunion tour. It's not as great as usual. They're trying to new songs, but they have some good old songs in there as well. And then this one is like, it's almost like a cover band coming in.
Yes.
Because you still have like the original leader singer, who's not that great anymore. And like it doesn't quite match with the youngsters.
All new musicians. All new musicians.
All new musicians. Exactly. That's exactly.
It's Whitesnake. It's Whitesnake, right? It's the Whitesnake of Indiana Jones movies. It's still David Coverdale at the front, but all the guys behind him are a third of his age.
Yeah. And like
that's it.
I think that's probably nails it, because that I had that same feeling with Star Trek. Star Trek now is a cover band. It is it is now a pop culture. It's not actually doing Star Trek stories. It's doing pop culture reference Star Trek stories. It's really annoying. Yeah. Casey says TV shows seem better than movies at the moment. Do you agree? Start with you, Frank, because I know you're not a big TV guy.
I would just say somewhat, because I feel like some TV shows are stretched longer than they should be when they could just be like maybe 4 episodes. I feel like shows like Barry, what I've heard about Barry and just how the format of it, it's like 30-minute shows. And I think like Bill Hader's probably a secret genius or something, because he knows how to do stories. Yeah. And like with a good people, like with people supporting him and people telling him that's a bad idea, he'll make a better idea. Yeah. So I feel like something like Barry works, but like there's some shows like on like maybe like Apple Plus where it's like, I don't know what you're doing there. Yeah. But yeah, that's my opinion on TV. I think it goes like some are good, some are bad, some are just like stretchy thin. I don't know. But yeah, that's my opinion.
So the last debate that sorry, Jonathan, what's your take on that? Sorry.
No, I agree with Frank. I think he's absolutely right. I think we talked about this in our review of The Mandalorian. It was 8 episodes long, but it could have been 4. Quite easily could have been 4. In fact, it probably didn't even need to be any, but that's a completely different thing.
Season 3 doesn't need
but weirdly, like we're watching a show at the moment. In fact, I think the last episode dropped today, Deadlock. And it's a sort of comedy take on the Broadchurch theme, and it's set in Tasmania, and it's by 2 wonderful writers, 2 Australian writers, and the language in it is absolutely diabolical. And it's a police procedural, right? But it's fantastic. It is genuinely really, really great, and so refreshing to get TV from that part of the world that I'm not necessarily familiar with. Now that's 8 episodes, and I wish it was 108 episodes, right?
Yeah.
But I think I completely agree with I totally agree that I think that probably the vast majority of TV shows are too long these days, because there's too much of an emphasis on this long storytelling format. Long storytelling's fine if you've got a long story to tell, but the vast majority of these stories now aren't the case.
I've complained about this with streaming. It's not long form storytelling. It's just they have very little plot, and they just stretch it.
Yeah.
They stretch a very thin plot, and I loved the last season of Picard. I think it was 10 episodes. If I'm being brutally honest, I love the show and I praise the show and I had very high things to say about it, but it really probably could have been a really incredible 6 episodes.
Absolutely.
But I still loved it. It was still better than anything that's come before. But I noticed that the long form TV shows are basically a lot of filler, and I think one of the only shows recently that didn't feel like that was Wednesday. That felt like a nice episodic sort of thing with a bit of a story arc throughout the series. I liked it.
But it won't be the
creators of Smallville.
From the creators of Smallville.
But the thing is, it won't be the same in the second series, or indeed the third series that they do. Because
I'm not sure. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure, because the creators of Smallville I trust them. They do look. They wrote Spider-Man 2. That's an incredible movie.
That's true.
They're good storytellers. If the show doesn't follow the same trajectory, it's because other producers and Netflix have probably stepped in. And also, I know that Jenna Ortega is now a producer on the show because she thinks she's hot shit, and I think she's just fucking annoying. But Shane Ford in the chat says, unless it's horror, why even bother watching sequels or spin-offs? People just pretend they're passable when it's all just mindless garbage. What do we agree? Disagree?
With horror, I don't know. I think horror is kind of loosey-goosey. To me, like horror is like, because it's like if you like it, you like it. If you don't like it, you don't have to. Like to me, like I love Michael Myers. I love Halloween. But damn, that series is like choose your own adventure. It doesn't. You could choose to like follow the storyline. Like you could, I could do like Halloween and then Halloween Kills and then Halloween Returns, or you can go Halloween 2, Halloween H2O, or Halloween 2, Halloween 4, Halloween 5. You can go any way you want to go. I love it. Same thing with like a Scream or whatever. There's like some things you could ignore. Like you could ignore 3 if you don't like 3. You could ignore 4 if you don't like 4.
Right.
Like, but I like the whole series in general. But like horror is like that. I think that's one of the best things about horror. It's like you could take it or leave it. It's like you could skip over one. Like I know with Friday the 13th, there's one with the fake Jason. I'm not sure how people feel about that, but to me, it's like if it's not Jason, then why do I care? So I just skip that one.
Yes.
But yeah, that's what I like about horror.
So there's a bit of a controversial thing that we haven't talked about yet that I think we need to, because Frank and I have talked about this in comments and over text, and is Indiana Jones a character or not? I know that in Red Letter Media's Temple of Doom review, or what, maybe that was a reviz, I can't remember, but they said that Indiana Jones he's just action man. And I strongly disagree with them on that. I don't think Indiana Jones is just action man. I think he is a quite realized character, and I think we see it from Raiders all the way through the series. I think Temple of Doom. The reason I'm iffy on Temple of Doom is because the theme is a good theme. It's just not well developed, and that theme of fortune and glory is great. And if Indy had been really pushing that the whole time until towards the end, that would have landed better. But he sort of mentions it at the beginning, and then it doesn't really come up at all for the rest of the time. So the question is, why do you think, Frank, that Indiana Jones isn't a realized character? What does he need to do to be a character that's not just action man in Raiders?
Here's the thing. One of the reasons why I don't think he's quite a character is because all the things we have issues with, the Dial of Destiny, is because he's just an old man. He's no longer action man, and that's what the problem is. And the same thing kind of goes with Crystal Skull a little bit, just a tiny bit. But I feel like he is just generic action man, in my opinion. In my opinion, I didn't grow up with this movie. I had no attachment. I just recently rewatched all these movies, and I thought Raiders was awesome, but it's all like action. It always keeps going. Because I remember seeing this, and I saw Raiders twice in the theater, at least twice. And every time when I watched it in the theater, I always get exhausted at the point when he's like, "What truck?" And there's that chase scene, and I'm like, "Oh man, I'm already exhausted. I'm gonna just like lay back and sit down." But I just feel like he's just I don't know. He's not really a character, because when he tried to make him a character, the less action there is. I don't know. I remember I was rewatching Last Crusade, and I felt like it was so safe. It didn't swing for the fences. Mind you, here's my opinion, guys. In high school, I love Last Crusade. It was my favorite one. So this is all fresh opinion after rewatching them. So after watching Last Crusade, I thought it was so safe. I thought the Nazis weren't as strong of a villain, because they're all falling down backwards into the water and banana peels. And they're not as a strong villain as the first one. Because the first one is almost like Inglourious Bastards of revenge film against the Nazis. Because at the end, they blow up, they melt. It's awesome. It's like revenge is F the Nazis. We're going to kill them. Yeah. It's awesome. And the whole time they're brutal jerks. And it's all action. It's all action. But the more you add character to Indy, the worse you the more problems the more things oh, you could cut this out, or you could have done this. It's because you're adding more character to him, and it's not all the action anymore. At least that's my opinion after rewatching.
I do get what you're saying. And I love the action. I love all the action in all of the original films. Even though I'm not a massive Temple of Doom fan, there are a ton of great action moments in that movie. But I guess the question is are we what does it mean to be a character? I always resonate with Captain Iron Dog. You missed a lot, buddy. He's just rocking up to the show now, an hour and 43 minutes in. You've missed
Captain Iron Dog. Freaking Luke pulled a 180 on Crystal Skull. You will not believe it when you rewatch this.
One time, I will agree that I pulled a 180. The one time I've actually pulled a 180. But so think about Raiders of the Lost Ark. I guess to me, when I put the writer brain on, action and character have to inform each other, I think. And I think that's what I love about Raiders of the Lost Ark, because I feel like I see that all the time. I feel like the opening of the movie, we see, the fact that he is skilled with the whip, he's skilled with the gun, he can outdo these booby traps. He's a little bit reckless. That to me is all his character coming out. So
that's sort of describing what he does. That's sort of how Princess Padme as a princess
No,
You know
no, no,
what I
no, no.
mean?
That's, no,
You're
no, no.
like you're describing what he does.
No. 'Cause what he does is his character. You are what you do.
See, what I mean, one big thing for throughout the whole franchise, actually, for me, that defies that he's just an action man is that there's almost a reluctance there. So if you look at the opening sequence of Raiders, where he goes to get the idol, the whole reason that he then runs away and gets shot at with arrows and bounces around and all the rest of it is because he got it wrong, right?
Yeah.
He got the weight of the sandbag wrong, and it goes down, and then he has the boulder and blah 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 blah. Whereas, what does Rambo get wrong in Rambo 2, 3, 4, 5? What does the Terminator get wrong in T2, T3, T4? Even to a certain degree with John McClane in the Die Hard movies, is that he gets things wrong. That's what sets him apart. As yes, he is very much more an action man for me than Indy, but he still gets things wrong. He's still a fallible hero. There's nothing fallible about John Rambo. There's nothing fallible about John Matrix and Commando. There's nothing fallible about the Terminator. Quite literally, there's nothing fallible, obviously, about the Terminator. And any other number of these characters. And that goes all the way to like the modern, like Rocky's another one, obviously, it goes all the way up to like the Expendables movies. Whereas the action sequences and all the action parts of the Indiana Jones movies, there's always a degree of reluctance on the part of Indy. So, he's either running away from something, right? So we get that in Doom when they're in the fantastic minecart chase. The opening sequence, obviously, in the club. He's been poisoned. He didn't poison himself, right? In Crusade, he has to rescue his dad from the belly of the tank. It's that sort of almost maybe not accidental, but there is the reluctance on his part to be part of that action, even though he can do all the action. He does not want to do it where he doesn't have to do it. Whereas, like,
because I
Rambo
know what you're talking
is
about.
a killer, right? That's what
there's
he does.
To back up your idea. There is that scene in Raiders when he's climbing on the plane, and then the Nazi comes up there, and he's like,
exactly.
All right, he climbs down. He climbs down from the plane.
Yeah.
I know what you're talking about. That's exactly what you're talking. He's like, do we have to, please?
Exactly.
All right.
Whereas we've got a whole sequence in Commando of Arnie tooling up. It's the same in Predator. They're not like for like movies. Of course, they're not like for like movies. But these guys are the action men.
Yeah.
Whereas I actually think Indiana Jones as a character maybe bridges the worlds between a character and an action man probably the best, more so than say Bond. More so than Bond. Bond's more of an action man than Indiana Jones.
Yeah, I would agree.
That's what
Bond's
he does.
very one-dimensional.
There's no accidental involvement when it comes to Bond. Whereas exactly that scene is a prime example of it. Is that he doesn't want to fight him. He's already just escaped from the tomb, and
What I think as well, like another scene. My main focus was looking at Raiders and seeing bits or character. I thought character was coming out. One bit is after he thinks Marion is dead. And
he's drinking.
He's drinking, but not only that. What happens next? He goes and has a chat with Belloc, and he's ready to fucking die.
He's ready to kill him.
He's like, all right. He's like, I got nowhere else to be. Let's go to hell, buddy. And then the kids come in and save him. That is a big character moment. That is him feeling the guilt of just basically feeling that he's probably killed Marion, the love of his life that he's abandoned all these years ago, from 10 years ago. And then when he sees her again, you see that burst of affection that comes out of him. And he's like, oh my God, you're alive. But then the next bit in that moment is he's like, shit, I found you. Shit, I have to leave you here. Yeah. Shit. And that to me is like, that's part of his character coming out, because he's like, he has to weigh up these options of, what do I do in the situation? If I take her, they're going to know. That's going to ruin this whole plan. I need to now sacrifice again the woman I love to the Nazis. And that's what I think again. Like what kind of what you're saying, Jonathan, is they balance. He's more of a balanced character. He's not just mindless Rambo action man. He is a teacher. We see him teaching. We see him having conversations with Brody. He's like, Brody, I don't fucking believe in this magic bullshit. What happens at the end? He's like, oh God, okay, this shit's going down. I guess close your eyes. because we're gonna die if we don't. If I remember my Bible stories right, we might die.
Yeah.
And that's why I always feel like he is. And I think Christian Young here in the chat, it says, honestly, even in Temple of Doom, where he's Action Man, he's still somewhat of an arc, and they give him plenty of humanity with his relationship with Short Round. And I agree. Like, I love that moment, Frank. I think you mentioned it the other day. That moment when Short Round imitates Indy.
Oh my god! Yeah, it's
so
like it's so good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. It's like straight out of Jaws, but it's perfect.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I love that stuff because that is his humanity coming out. That is his connection to the people that he's around coming out. And I think Shane Ford mentions that there's more downtime in Raiders where we get to see him act like a normal person.
Yeah, that's true.
I think that's true. Because I guess I grew up watching Raiders the most, followed by Crusade, because Temple of Doom, to me, it's the weakest of the three, and so I watched those two. The most, and I think they have the most characterization. Where Indy 2 Temple of Doom is just a 2-hour action scene, and it's not that it's bad action.
Yeah, it's not as bad.
Yeah.
It's incredible. There's great action in that movie, so I'm not dogging that in any way. Christian Young says, I always felt Lucas wanted Indy just to be roguish action serial man with questionable morals, virginal princess, while Spielberg pushed for him to be more of a character with pathos. I mean, we were.
Yep, you need both of them. Yep, you need both Lucas and Spielberg.
Yeah, I think so, because there is a comment in the making of Raiders where they do make the comment that they always wanted Indy to be one step behind. He's basically like a hard-boiled detective who is on a mission trying to find some stuff out, but he's always getting into scrapes and always fumbling and always getting his face punched because he's not, he isn't the action man that we think he is.
Yeah, he's not the perfect action man. He's a flawed action man.
Yeah, and I think that to me speaks to him as a character.
I guess, I'll go with that because I do agree, because I feel like Indy, out of all the action, because I started noticing
Frank to agree! Yes!
Luke, okay, hang on. Because it happened during Dial of Destiny. So my sister was like, oh my God, he keeps losing. I'm like, have you not watched any of these movies?
Exactly.
I was like, he never wins. He never wins. Indy always loses.
Yeah.
And that's what makes him great.
Well, that's what makes great characters. I mean, what is great about Die Hard is it's watching John McClane. He's vulnerable. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of my favorite characters, heroes, are vulnerable heroes.
Although I do like him as awesome action man in Die Hard 2.
Die Hard 2 is fun. Die Hard 3 is better.
Yes. Well, obviously, I think Die Hard 3 is probably the best of the whole series, but I have a soft spot for Die Hard 2. I think it's just because it's the first one I watched.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Captain Iron Dog, Frank agrees. What timeline are we in?
What?
We fucked
Someone's
up
been messing about with the Archimedes dial. I think that's what it is. But it can only go to one place, so it doesn't really. That doesn't make sense.
I can fix it, Luke. I can fix it, Luke. I can fix it.
If you don't know, John,
let me go back.
That's the evil Flash from the new Flash movie.
Yeah, let me put some light on the subject. Yeah. This ugly thing.
I think I preferred it with the light out, to be honest with you.
the Will Robinson.
Is that not what the audiences said when they came out of the Flash?
Shane Ford says, I agree with Luke. Defining Indy in Raiders as action man is like watching the film with your eyes closed. His character is defined by how he acts in high-risk situations, like Buster Keaton. Yeah,
I mean, the thing is, I don't. It's not that he's not an action man. It's not that at all.
No, he is an action. Yeah, definitely he is. Yeah.
He is an action star. It's not it's not that at all. It's that the means through which the action takes place, or the catalyst through it. I mean, that sum up is perfect. He's always one step behind. He's the only action star that's always one step behind. Bond is never a step behind. Rambo is never a step behind. Well, in the first, I suppose, in First Blood he is, but in the rest of them he isn't.
Yeah.
To a certain degree, even John McClane isn't a step behind. When once he gets going, he's always ahead. So So
it kind of reminds me of like Indiana Jones. Like people are like, "Oh, Ethan Hunt's not a character," and like actually he is. Like
Ethan Hunt is an awesome character. Yeah.
He really cares about his team. He cares about his mission. He cares about doing the right thing. He has
Absolutely.
really strong morals, and I kind of think Ethan Hunt, Indiana Jones are quite similar in that regard, and that they're definitely moral driven characters. They don't always succeed.
This might be controversial, but I've always found that I cannot sympathize with Ethan Hunt because he's played by Tom Cruise. I think if you gave that role to someone else, I would enjoy those movies a lot more than I do.
Because is that because Tom Cruise is a weirdo?
I'm not a massive
or is it because he doesn't change? He doesn't change at all. Is that why?
Tom Cruise in Mission Impossible is the same Tom Cruise as he was in The Mummy, as he is in Top Gun, as he is in Days of Glory.
Yeah, because he doesn't change.
There are one or two. It's Tom Cruise. It's not Ethan Hunt for me. It's Tom Cruise.
He has a very good arc in Top Gun Maverick,
which I've not seen yet. I've not seen.
And Collateral is awesome. To me, I think he should do more villains. He needs to do more villains. I wish he did.
Again, Collateral. I love Michael Mann and I love Heat and things like that, and it just did not land for me because I should go back and watch it. I've not watched it.
Yeah, I like Collateral. I do.
Yeah, Collateral's good. I like Collateral.
I dig it. I do.
He's very good in what I will give Tom Cruise. He's very good in Born on the 4th of July, but that's a good movie. I enjoyed that movie from start to finish. And I thought he was very, very good in it. But it's probably his least Tom Cruise movie. It's probably his least Tom Cruise performance.
What about A Few Good Men? I liked A Few Good Men. He's all right.
Yeah, he's Tom Cruise in that. He's Tom
Cruise, isn't it? Rain Man, he's borderline because he's still quite young in Rain Man. But then you get into Cocktail, and then you get into Firm, and then you get into Days of Thunder, and you get into a whole litany of these movies where he's just Tom Cruise. And
he's just Tom Cruise.
Makes money,
Tropic Thunder, dude.
Okay. He is not Tom Cruise there, and he is great. I think Ethan Hunt. I think Mission Impossible. It's his best vehicle for him. I think that's why I don't really care about his other catalog.
Absolutely.
Edge of Tomorrow, Luke. Edge of Tomorrow.
I've never seen it.
You've never seen Edge of Tomorrow?
No.
Oh my God! I almost swore. I don't want to swear.
What the? I've done a few times. It's all right. We're 2 hours in. I don't think
YouTube's not watching anymore.
No. We can say
they clicked off.
Well, hopefully Tom Cruise isn't watching anymore. I know that we wished him a happy birthday, but I'm kind of glad that you might have checked out once he got his happy birthday messages.
We got more people watching now than at that time, so he probably is watching now.
I think he is watching.
Sorry, Tom.
He strikes me as the kind of person that would do that right enough.
He's watching random streams on YouTube.
He'll have his SEO set up to get his alerts and his RSS feed and things like that. Yeah.
So I tweeted my I'm sorry, I have not seen Edge of Tomorrow. I'll watch it if it's on any of these streaming services. I can maybe watch it tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll see. I'm tired, and the wife and the kid are coming home tomorrow, so I need to make sure I'm well rested. But yeah, I tweeted my ranking of the Indiana Jones films after doing the show on Friday. But I did put a caveat that I am entitled to change my opinion. And I knew if I didn't put that, I'd get shit from Frank here. So I made sure that I put that in there. And the thing is, my initial three haven't changed. I don't think. Well, no, that's not true. That's not true. I'm reverting back to Raiders 1, Crusade 2, Temple of Doom 3. I'm sticking with the original three being within the original three lineup. But it is, where do I now put Dial in relation to Crystal Skull? I want to hear from Frank and Jonathan first before I give my final verdict.
Yeah,
I have to live with for the rest of my life.
I go first? Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know how I feel because we actually just talked about this. But I'd have to watch Dial again. But this is going because I wrote this before we started the stream, so I'm going to stick with this list. Number 1, Temple of Doom. I love that movie. Oh my God, Willie Scott and like all the sexual tension and them screaming and Little Short Round. Indy, you're my best friend. I love you. That's
Indy.
great.
I hate Willie Scott though. I hate Willie Scott.
Prepare to meet Kali in hell. Great. There's so many awesome moments in that movie.
That is good.
2 is Raiders.
Yep.
3, I have Dial of Destiny.
Interesting.
I know. And then next 4 is Last Crusade, and then 5 is Crystal Skull.
Okay, you're entitled to change your lineup at any time.
Yeah.
So that's okay.
Yeah, that's of now. As of now, I haven't rewatched it. Dial of Destiny. Maybe I'll love it less, but
yeah,
I had a great time at the movies.
Jonathan?
That's it, right? It's got to be, I think, Crusade for me is 1, Raiders 2, then probably Doom, Destiny, Skull.
Interesting.
And I think I'm with you in that. Look, I think the 3, there's a big gulf between 2 and 3. For me, there's a big gulf between Crusade and Doom for me, but I still think that Doom as a movie, because it's set and it's got the aesthetics and it's got the team behind it and it's got the lines and and Harrison Ford isn't an old man. I think it still edges out the sort of postscript, and I think that's the problem. I think that 4 and 5 just feel like a postscript. They don't feel as much part of it because there's a whole litany of reasons, right? There's physical time between Crusade and Skull, and then of course Skull and Dial, and I think that's I think that will always separate those two. Yeah. Ironically, I kind of want them to make another one so that there's almost 2 trilogies.
I don't.
Yeah. I agree with you.
In a strange sort of way. I don't particularly want to watch it, but I'd quite like to have a postscript. Don't do it.
You want like an original Star Wars trilogy, then you want like an Indiana Jones prequel.
No, I feel like there's another story there because I feel like we need to have him like happy with one more adventure, because at the end of this one, it felt like he finally became Indy again because he found a reason to live. Yeah. He found a reason to live. Almost like you're obviously by no comparison, but you've got Star Trek's 2, 3, and 4 serve as a trilogy in their own right, but obviously are a part of a much greater picture. Yeah, and it kind of feels that. Could Dial of Destiny be that Empire Strikes Back almost middle for doing another one in say 2 years' time? Maybe. I didn't come out the cinema last night thinking that I would ever see something like that, but I'm thinking out loud here. Yeah, because we could have Short Round in the third one, bring that back, bring back the adventure.
That's it. Yeah. That's it. And it would make sense. It would make sense given, obviously the sort of everything that's happened in the real world in the last sort of 18 months since the movie was first made,
Yeah, I don't think I want to see another one. I definitely view both 4 and 5 as epilogues that you don't need to read. And that's fine. Like you can count them if you want, but you don't have to if you don't want to, and that's absolutely fine.
Almost like a horror movie. You choose your own adventure.
Honestly, kind of. Because I just I don't know. Another one wouldn't be creative. Another one wouldn't bring Short Round back. It would bring Helena back, and they would make her the action person. Because that's really what they wanted.
A backdoor pilot. Yeah.
Yes. The only good thing about Indy 4-5 tanking is that they probably won't make another one.
Yeah.
And if it made bank, we wouldn't get another one. We would get the adventures of Helena Shaw and Unibrow, and it just wouldn't be fun.
That sort of it's that kind of Rocky Balboa into Creed. That sort of translation, or indeed Generations.
But that's a better series. Oh my god, yeah.
Oh, it's a lot better. Of course it is. Of course, it's a lot better. But
Creed is amazing.
But again, not a $300 million movie. That's why.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So I think with my final ranking, like I said, the first 3 then are it's Raiders, Crusade, and Temple of Doom. What's made me change my mind a little bit on things also is having seen the movie, but also I was discussing it briefly on Twitter with if you know the bitter script writer. He's a writer who writes for Superman and Lois, and he wrote the book Michael Effing Bay, which is a book I'm assuming Frank should own if he doesn't already.
I never even heard of it.
He's a cool guy. And if things work out, one day I might get him on my show. But he made a really good point in that Temple of Doom, because Dial was my third for a bit, but then he made the very good point that Temple of Doom, while having problems, has much better and much more clever set pieces. Yeah, and I really couldn't disagree with that. And I thought, you know what, as much as I am annoyed with Willie Scott, I like Short Round, I like Indiana. Those set pieces are very memorable. There is a sense of tension. There is really good action, and therefore it knocked Dial out of its position. But now, having watched Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, and realizing that Dial really, really desperately missed the touch of Spielberg and Lucas, I'm like, it probably belongs. It probably belongs in the number 5 spot. So I'm Crystal Skull then Dial now. That 4K upgrade is great. You know,
I did this. This is my fault.
The color correction is good. And again, like I'm not backtracking on what I said on Indy 5. I pretty much everything I've said here I said in my previous discussion on it. It's not a great movie. It's fun. It's rather inoffensive to the series as a whole. It doesn't ruin the character for me. If people, you know, Last Jedi doesn't ruin Luke Skywalker for me. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, they're still badasses because I don't need anything beyond the original trilogy.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I feel the same with Indy.
It's also, I mean, let's not forget, it's also the 5th film in this franchise. I mean,
and it's still pretty good. Yeah.
What franchises can we then point to at that sort of level of longevity to say, yeah, do you know what? It's still as good as the first couple. You know, as I mentioned, apart from the top Tom Cruise part, but you know, like this point is that this film was always going to face an uphill battle, always going to, just like Crystal Skull did in 2008. The problem is that this one's coming after Crystal Skull, which already set the bar really, really low, but it's still a bar that you have to get to. So it's not perfect. It's maybe not even the best it could be, but it's not bad either.
I don't disagree with you, Casey. Replace Waller-Bridge with Short Round, and the dial would be Oscar worthy. I'm certain that Disney are kicking themselves putting Phoebe Waller-Bridge in that movie when Ki Kwan just rocketed back into fame and stardom after everything.
Well, he was at the premiere, wasn't he? He was. He was there, and those two still have that wonderful friendship and chemistry.
Yes.
In real life, and that's only going to translate to the screen, right? It
would have. It really would have. Instead of making up some random goddaughter, like who cares?
Yeah.
Make a sixth one.
I'm all. Listen, I'm in. I'm all in.
They would have to bring Lucas and Spielberg back.
Yep.
And cut the budget in half.
And it would have to be a Short Round indie adventure, and Marion would have to have some sort of better role than just I'm going to come in and put food in the fucking refrigerator.
Yeah.
You know, at least Marion was somewhat active in Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. You know, she was. I love Marion. Marion is like a dream. Like she's witty. She's smart.
A hugely underused character, actually. Yep. Arguably in all of cinema, not just in this franchise, but a hugely underused character.
Someone made a really good point on Twitter earlier today that I saw. That's like the best actress to never play Lois Lane is Karen Allen, and I was like, oh my god,
yeah.
She would have been perfect. I don't really like Lois Lane from the Christopher Reeves movies. Can't remember her name, Margot Kidder or something like that.
Margot Kidder,
yeah,
the late great Margot Kidder, yep.
But yeah, Karen Allen would have been an incredible Lois Lane, stunning as well. Anyway, any other final thoughts on Indiana Jones franchise? We've been rambling for 2 hours. I know, Frank, you had a very long, late show yesterday. You might be tired.
My body's still on my freaking work time. I woke up at the same normal time I usually do for work.
Oh, I hate that.
Me off.
I hate that.
I have a built-in clock. But I had a 3 hour and 45 minute stream. It should have been 2 episodes. I just kept going.
I mean, when you're on a roll, you're on a roll.
I know.
You know. Yeah. My solo stream on Friday was 3 hours long of just me rambling about Indiana Jones, Star Trek, and then Indiana Jones again.
Yes.
But any other final thoughts, Jonathan, on the old Indiana Jones franchise?
I think the work for Indy 6 starts here. I think that's it. I think that I've completely turned myself around over the course of the last 2 hours. I want 6. Make it 6.
Yeah.
Indy 6.
You sold me on 6.
Make it 2 trilogies. Make it 2 trilogies.
Yeah, you have to at this point.
Make it in the next couple of years. So everybody go out and watch.
He's 80. He's 80 years old.
He does the Stallone part in Creed.
Yeah.
He does the Stallone part. It rounds it off because he's already kind of doing that in Dial of Destiny. Come on.
Because you have the opening scene. Have the opening scene where he's injured or something, and he goes to Short Round, and Short Round has to take the case and occasionally visit Indy.
Absolutely, make it happen. Let's do it.
Wait, Luke, have you seen Creed? Have you seen Creed, Luke?
No.
Damn. Okay. Yeah.
I
That's
haven't
right.
even seen all the Rocky movies. I love Rocky, but I just haven't gotten around. It's one of those things. Like, there's like 30 Rocky movies. There's like 30 Creed movies. It's like it's hard to watch all these franchises that have.
But they're good. It's a
30
good
movies.
example though of how to do it.
Okay.
They set the template, honestly.
Very true.
I'll give Creed a watch. I'm aware of the idea of it, and maybe that could work. I'm just like an Indiana Jones movie without Indiana Jones involved in the action. I guess he can drive the car. Just couple things in the chat. Shane, Temple of Doom has legendary set pieces. Last Crusade has the tank scene. Everything else is boring. I'm assuming by everything else you mean 4 and 5, because 1 has great moments. And he also says that Margot Kidder is a great actor. No, she's not. She's a good actor. She's just not a good Lois Lane. Great in Black Christmas. Amityville Horror. She's not. She's not. The Superman movie is weakened by Lois Lane and Lex Luthor and Lex Luthor's goofy sidekick.
Yeah,
Lex Luthor, Otis, yes.
Otis, yeah, that's it. Yes,
and
North,
Casey,
Miss Tessmacher, North.
Casey says, "Good old ramble, guys. Appreciate it. You're welcome."
I should say I have new appreciation for the series because it's a series I'd not really grown up on. Because when I was younger, I watched it like once at my aunt's house, and then again in 2008, and then again now, where it's like, oh yeah, now I appreciate it. It's a completely different vision every time I've seen the series.
Yeah. It's a great one. I love Indiana Jones. He's one of my favorite characters. I think thinking about it as a kid, I probably pretended to be Indiana Jones. The only character to maybe rival who I pretended to be was Spider-Man. But I always wanted to be Indiana Jones as much as I wanted to be Spider-Man. So I've loved this character since I was a kid, which is why Crystal Skull initially in 2008 disappointed me, and why I'm kind of like meh to this final swan song, maybe a black swan song. I don't know. It's not the
or
maybe
not,
call it
or
goose
not
song.
If we get our way, Frank and I get our way,
her six
or not.
We'll see. Maybe Kathleen Kennedy is watching and she's taking notes.
Yes.
You could hire us.
Absolutely.
But anyway, I will be back.
And we're cheap as well. We're cheap.
We will be cheaper. I'll be back Wednesday. I have a thriller author named Heather Fitt who's coming on the show. We're doing a Scream retrospective. We're going to talk about Scream 1 to 3. I haven't seen these movies until this weekend, where I watched all the first 3. So we're going to talk about the that franchise and what I think about that. Bet you can't wait. Frank, when are you? Oh, we have a show on Sunday.
Yeah, we have a show on Sunday. We're going to talk about Batman 89. I'm trying to use less text as possible advertising it, because you just need to see the Batman logo. Like, that's all you need. Be there, July 9th.
Yes,
2 p.m. EDT.
Follow, go follow I Want My TV Now on YouTube. That's where we'll be Sunday.
Next Sunday, yep.
2:30 Eastern Time, 7:30 p.m. British Summer Time. Jonathan, what do you want to promote? Promote yourself.
Well, I'm back in the UK a week today, and a week tomorrow. I'm at the Lakeland Book of the Year prize because I have been shortlisted. So nice. I may be celebrating with tears of joy, or be tears of devastation. Either where there will be tears. So that's what I've got to look forward to in my future. So yeah, I'm quite excited.
Sounds good. And where can people find you outside of YouTube, if you want to throw your hand out?
I'm Twitter and Instagram at JDWhitelaw13. I'm always there. I'm always about. I'm like a bad smell. I'm the bad smell you can't get rid of. That's good. That's going in my head. So thank you.
My Twitter handles are IWantMyTVNow, and on Instagram IWantMyTVNow.
That's it. And I'm Luke Writes Crime on Twitter. I'm on other social media I never use them, so just follow me on Twitter and YouTube. Yep. Casey says, see you Sunday, guys. Captain Iron Dog says this was fun where I jumped in. Go watch the beginning. You'll hear my 180, my true 180. But I will.
It's wonderful.
It's wonderful. I'll see you Wednesday, and Frank and I will see you Sunday. Good night and farewell.